Ha ha ha, bonjour, good day. How are you? Oh wait, no, camera's not on. Wait, why? What will have done? Leftist camera. Yeah, I know, if it's not leftist audio, then it's leftist camera. Wake up. Hello, there she is. Hello. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the internet. Have a look around. There we go. We got green. I think that this one is a little obstructed. That's better. Okay, now we have green. Hello. Okay, yes, we are here. Welcome in. So our chill time today is going to be a little bit shorter. Obviously, because we started a little bit later. And also because we have a lot to cover today. So we are going to be very busy bees. Very busy bongos. For sure. 7 years ago. I am full of references today. Okay, so let me shuffle this stuff around. It is nice and toasty in my apartment today, which is part of why I have started stream so late, because it's like taking a lot of effort to cool it down in here. So, yeah, it's like gonna start cooling down outside here soon, which I think means that the air conditioning is gonna start being a little bit, more useful. Yeah, guns, and we haven't even started yet. Yeah, I'm showing them off too much. I always forget how much they actually show off when I'm just trying to put up my hair. Yeah, anyway. Hello, welcome. Hit the like button if you're just coming in, by the way, because we're ready to get fucking going soon. Yeah, the Jimmy shirt. We see the Mr. Atheist shirt everybody's repping. I think that my light managed to get too close to me. Let me move it. Okay. I just have so many things logistically today. That's better. I'm covered in black. Black hoodie, black lipstick, black eyeshadow, black nail polish. Well, good for you, living in a place where you can get away with wearing all black. It's too fucking hot for that, for me. Yes, happy Lunasa, Jay. I didn't actually end up making breb, but I probably will sometime this week. I do want to honor that part of Lunasa. It's hot in Seattle, I'm dying, but I look so fucking cool. I mean, you know, that's the thing about goths. Goths are just really into it. The NB beater, true. There's so many folks in here that I can, like, barely catch up and say hello to everybody. What's up, Christy? What's up, Timarinia? Hello. What's up, Paul Hack? Oh, what's up, Julie? Welcome in. Yeah, it's nice to have folks in here who don't normally get to hang out. We, you know, we have our streams on this, like, fairly regular schedule. I do my best to accommodate multiple different time zones throughout the week, but you know, sometimes people just cannot quite get their schedules to align. Not a big deal. Very excited you here. I'm excited me here. Listen, you chose a bad time to call me. My doctor calls me sometimes at the most inconvenient times. It's like, dude, yeah, I'm really glad, but I'm like literally working. I did a Tummy Tuesday post today, so now I can eat my dinner and get all bloaty. Yeah, I ate right before stream and did a talk to doctor, please. Listen, my conversations with him last for like an hour, so I don't have time. I'm gonna have to call him back later. But goodness gracious. So I ate some salmon earlier, which was delish. Salmon is quite yummy. And I had some Brussels sprouts. Delish. Do you like having body hair? I do not really like having body hair. In fact, I have an epilator to tear out my leg hair. I think I'm at 15 streams in a row on the website at this point. Hell yes, Kitty. Welcome to the show, everyone. I'm on a war against all hair on my body. Yeah, is it like ContraPoints? You're like, I will be a hairless egg thing. We're just gonna do like 10 or 15 minutes of chilling and hanging out, y'all, and then we're gonna deep dive into this shit. It's gonna take a long time. Do epilators hurt? Yeah, I mean, at first, but then it just kind of doesn't... I mean, it honestly starts to feel good, like after the second or third time you do it. Like assuming that you do your entire leg and like both of your legs, and then you come back to it in a few weeks and you do it again, kind of thing. Like by the time you get to the third, you're like, actually, this is quite an enjoyable sensation. But the first time, it definitely is like, yo, ooh. Just scheduled my annual eye exam like a good adult. Nice. Do I like fans? Not really. I just am hot. Can't be worse than tweezing. I mean, if you can imagine, it's not just tweezing, you know? Like, when you can tweeze in two different ways. You can, like, tweeze and, like, pull the hair out, or you can tweeze, like, yanking it out. And so the epilator is, like, the yanking version of tweezing, but, like, a lot. Over a large area very quickly, you know, repeatedly. Doing electrolysis? Hell yeah, electrolysis. Think I'm just gonna do laser on my legs eventually. I probably will do laser on my legs eventually, TBH. Maybe not, like, maybe not with the intention of being thorough, but with the intention of, like, just getting some of it. Just, like, reducing it, you know? Okay, maybe I'll text my doc back before we get started on this thing, because he did text me. So yeah, we're gonna get into talking about this hearing thing in a little bit. Mama Mephistopheles did take some notes and stuff, and so we are gonna have like some timestamps to sort of skip around through. So we're probably not gonna watch the entire 2-hour shindig, but we will watch like a good chunk of it and respond to a good chunk of it. So it's probably gonna be a pretty in-depth segment. Oh my god, delicious. Water is good. Drink water. It's too hot out here to not be drinking water. Okay, texting. Can you... I really hate when autocorrect, like, corrects something that I just typed twice. My god, my phone is just not wanting to cooperate with me right now. You all said to respond to my doctor, so I'm doing it. I have a quick question because I was told by someone that the expiry date after puncturing a bottle of estradiol isn't really the 28 days they tell you it is, and it's good for longer than that. So I would say, so here's what my perspective is with my testosterone before. Like, I was on T, and I was on, like, a fairly low dose, and I was supposed to be like, okay, I'm going back into the same bottle. And so it says, like, single use on it, you know? But, like, if there is a, what did he say? If there's a preservative in it, and there was a preservative in the list of ingredients, then it should be okay to reuse. But, like, if there was any cloudiness in the fluid, you should not use it. And if there were any crystals in the fluid, then you should warm it up, because it usually means it's too cold. But, like, I only one time ever saw, like, oh, there's whiteness in there. And it was like right toward the end of my bottle. So I would ask your pharmacist, TBH, as long as it doesn't have floaters, estrogen can last like a couple years. Yeah, well, the question is, like, is it totally, like, you know, if you're re-entering the same bottle, you know, are you totally sure that at no point is there any yeast in the air getting on your needle and then getting inside there or whatever? Like, yeast is just an example. What's up, Anansi? No, we have not gotten into talking about the thing. We're doing just like a few minutes of warm-up, and then we're gonna get started on the whole deal. I'm just like drinking water and trying to deal with how hot it is in here. My pharmacist said 28 days. My date last night said absolutely not. I guess I would look at the bottle as well. Like, what does it say on the bottle? Shout out to the girls stockpiling their E because they live in the red states. Yeah, red states are just real terrible. You know, we're not a fan. Even after being stranded out where the roads ain't paved for 2 months and being completely out of the loop from any news, it's still no shock that my rights are in danger. Fun times, Lamau. I think that this hearing is in particular about gender-affirming care for trans kids. So it's not a broader threat yet, but it will be a broader threat soon, obviously. Like, that's the direction that this goes. They have literally stated in emails that have now leaked that that's their intention, is to, like, start with kids because that's the wedge in, and then they will use that to then go, like, ah, yes, let's expand these limitations. Yeah, the future for trans kids is scary to me, too. Excuse me. Yeah, we know how the song goes. Exactly, Speedy Shimeji. First verse is the kids, second verse is everyone. Seattle mentioned, hello, Silent. I hope you're feeling a little bit better than earlier today. I know it's been a rough time lately for a lot of folks, you know? I feel like, you know... Okay, I don't know how popular this is, because I don't know how many people have this experience, and I feel like almost a little bit alienated from other people at this time, which, like, sucks. Because I feel like finally shit is starting to make sense in my life, you know? And so, like, notwithstanding the fascism of it all, I am, like, you know, like, for as much as I'm not in a great mood sometimes, or even a good portion of the time, like, I feel like I'm finally kind of content and, like, I have an idea. But I think that's maybe because I have a clear life direction at this time. Like, for at least the next 3 years, I know what's gonna happen. And so maybe that's part of it. Like, it's easier to feel sort of contented if you feel like you know what's gonna happen. But, yeah, hand hurty. Ugh, rip in pieces. I think that pain management is very shitty in this country right now. Like, the response to the opioid epidemic has been to very seriously under-medicate people for pain and, like, surgical recovery and things like this. Where's all the gender plasma pals? Yeah, gender fluids, gender solids. Hell yeah, still gonna be transing my gender and nodding my binaries. Federal government be damned. Yeah, I need to, like, finish printing out some stuff for my passport and everything, but very soon I'm gonna have an ID that actually says the correct gender marker on it. It's gonna be great. Pee Wee Herman died at a time when I feel his voice would be needed. I hadn't heard about him at all for a long time until just hearing the news about him passing away. I donate plasma twice a week. Does that make me a gender plasma pal? I think it does. 60 viewers. Goodness gracious, 60 viewers. Only 32 likes. I see you. I'm here to guilt trip you into hitting the like button. Not really, but it's appreciated when you do. It always directly helps the stream, and we will be segueing momentarily into our main topic for today. We're letting people trickle in at the moment, and we will be switching soon. I'm going through a similar phase myself. I'm more familiar with myself and the world around me than ever before. My job is doing much better this year, and seems to be going in a good direction as well. However, I never feel really secure at any time, unfortunately. Nevertheless, I'm at a place of relative stability and peace. Yeah, sorry Lex, I abandoned shame years ago. No worries. Yeah, no worries, Tenley. I am also late to stream because I was eating dinner. Yeah, Christy. Yeah, whatever. Anyway. Listen, when we get to 50 likes, I will start the segment. How about that? How dare you eat food? I know. Yeah. And I think that maybe the house is starting to cool down a little bit. Not liking now. I don't want to talk about sad stuff. Yeah, we do have to go over it though. Like, there is an expectation. People talk about it in the Discord server now. There's like an expectation that I cover certain things, and this is definitely one of them. Food in this economy? Yeah. Yeah. Trickle in streamonomics. Absolutely trickle in streamonomics. All we need is 7 more likes, and then I'll start the segment. We're very close. I'm so ready. Unironically, the week I spent in the psych ward away from the internet was the best my mental health has been in years. Willow, thank you so much for the tier 2 sub. I really appreciate that. I hope you enjoy your dicks. Yes, thank you so much. Let us update the thing. Maybe today I will figure out how to flex my legs on camera in addition to flexing my arms, you know? I feel like maybe I could stand on this couch thing and, perhaps flex off the quads or something. I don't know, man. We'll figure it out. It is Tummy Tuesday. Yeah. Dude, the abs are starting to happen a little bit. Not like a lot, but I can tell the difference. So, that's very exciting for me. 3 more likes. Does trans dicks mean trans femme or trans masc dicks? It means all trans dicks. Every trans dicks. Thank you, Masked Soul. Recently subbed to you. Hope you're doing well during this awful stuff going on. Listen, I feel like I'm doing, like, better than probably ever in my entire life, which is weird. Dorian Gay, thank you so much for the $15 dono. Arms. Yeah, we will get there. Arms is it. Did the arms fall asleep? They fell asleep. That's not gonna lead to very much good, flexing if the arms are asleep. Today was not Arms Day. Today was Legs Day. How do you do the trans dicks again? If you ever want to put a background behind the emojis, and so this is one of the reasons for you all to join the website chat. If you're over on YouTube, this website chat over here, luxander.net/live, this is not Twitch. Come to the website, custom emojis. But yeah, you just do the emoji and then a colon and then the whatever the word is. So like dicks : gay will result in like one with a gay flag, you know? But yeah, dicks is a sub-only emote, my dudes. I'm so sorry. Are you on Twitch now? I am not on Twitch now. I don't stream on Twitch, really. I probably should, but I just don't care to. I like to call myself slurs, y'all, and that's not really compatible with Twitch TOS. Okay, I see that we're over 50 likes. I will do what I said I would do. Uncomfortable with a tier 1 sub. Goodness gracious, y'all. It's like, today is when rent is due. I always expect like the first of the month to be a pretty low dono day because y'all are paying your bills, but like, listen, I really appreciate it. I'm happy to be surprised. Yeah, I got some extra monies in and I want my dicks back. I'm sorry for taking it away from you. You can have it back now. Was that a tier 1? Yeah, tier 1. Okay, so I will add $5. There we go. There we go. We're very, very, very close. Yeah, rent is due today. Yeah, I paid rent this week, and I paid off all my credit cards this week. You know how it is. Twitch kind of sucks, TBH. You get like 2 minutes of unskippable ads at a time, and there's no playback option. Ooh. What are you talking about today? Welcome to the website, RPG Cookie. Amazing. So today we're going to be talking about, and we are actually going to segue into it right now, I guess. Okay. There has been no end of coverage on this channel of all of the different laws across the country. Oh, I'm sure I missed some, because there are literally 700 at this point. I'm sure I missed some. All over this country, state-level laws attempting to curb the rights of transgender people, transgender individuals, and particularly trans children. You know, those of us who were trans minors at one point understand what it is like to not have access to gender-affirming care, which includes therapists who can help you figure out exactly what it is that you need, and doctors who are willing to help work with you on affirming medications and etc. We all know what that experience is like, of not knowing what to do and not having that resource. And there has been a brief time of social acceptance, very, very, very brief time of social acceptance of trans people, and the idea of transgender children entering the public consciousness has fueled this like right-wing backlash, right? It has been devastating to see all across this country how just trans people's rights are being attacked in numerous different ways, and especially trans children. So this is their wedge thing. This is how they get their foot in the door to attacking trans care in general. There have been documents leaked that indicate like their actual internal communications that say that explicitly, that they start with children and then they say, oh, well, maybe up to age 21. Oh, well, maybe up to age 25. Oh, well, maybe you don't deserve it at all. And there was a case recently where a judge ruled that, like, you know, there was the abortion is not like part of the traditions of this country. And so people are now saying that because transgender people apparently didn't exist back then, and they totally did, that like it's not part of the traditions in our country. So it's going to happen that trans rights are attacked on the federal level, and we are now there. That's where we are now, where they're having a meeting at the House Judiciary Subcommittee, like a hearing, topics including gender dysphoria, Title IX in women's sports, and parental decision-making around gender-affirming care. This is like advocates for and against gender-affirming care for minors testifying, and it is, as far as I understand it, going to be as frustrating as you think it will be. They are trying to find ways that aren't directly in the legislative process to cancel access to gender-affirming care. This is the scary overtaking of our democracy part of a fascist takeover, where you know, we've set up this process where you're supposed to vote for a representative. The representative votes on your behalf to some extent, representing their whole district as best they can, and then they cooperate and make the laws, right? But executive power is being deployed to circumvent that democratic Republican process. And so this is a direct undermining of the American institution, as it claims to work in any case. So that's where we're at, and we're gonna go ahead and watch this, and it's gonna be kind of a long segment, I imagine, because the video itself is like 2 hours long. We are gonna watch it on a quicker speed, and I didn't bring my tissues in here. Hold on. Sorry, my headphones are a little bit grody. Using the loaded term mutilation as a scare tactic to use children as pawns. Yeah. It's definitely not cute. I might need to actually get like a wet wipe for these this earwax. So give me a second and I'll come back. I had to do it at 2 times speed to keep my brain from liquefying and slurping out my ears. Yeah, no shit. Okay. Yeah, I'll be right back, and then we'll continue and start watching the video because it is gonna take a while. Yay! Okay, I'm back. Gotta clean off my earbuds and get on the segment. I let my sibling borrow my headphones, and I don't think she even noticed that they got all gross. So, yay. Kids care is banned in my state already, bracing for the attack on my adult care. Yeah, it's not gonna be a good time. Okay. Water. Yeah, last time I do that, I just need to buy her own pair of headphones. Alright, let's get into it. So yeah, just general usurpation of the democratic process, and so we will see, we'll see how they try to do this at the federal level. I'm not sure exactly how they're going to attempt this, because they don't have the executive power right now, so I guess they're just gonna have to do some stuff in the courts. Like, they're gonna use the courts, I think, because they don't have the ability to legislatively or executive powers usurp the will of the people on this one. Excuse me. So let me get my timestamp document ready. And we will skip to... So I want to point out first, as Mama Mephistopheles pointed out, Marjorie Taylor Greene was brought in to this meeting to introduce the anti-trans witnesses, and a Democrat pointed out that this would have required unanimous consent from the committee, which Marjorie did not have, so Marjorie was removed. I'm not sure if that happened. Did that actually happen on screen here? Oh, hold on, I need to change this. Let's see.
Gender-affirming care for minors, featuring advocates in favor and against the practice. During their testimony, speakers also highlighted topics from parental rights in the decision-making process to gender dysphoria. From a House Judiciary Subcommittee, this is 2 hours and 15 minutes.
Wonderful.
The subcommittee will come to order. Without objection, the chair is authorized to declare recess at any time. We open our proceedings here with the Pledge of Allegiance, and I recognize the gentlelady from Georgia.
Okay, so let's skip to the first timestamp. We got 2 minutes. At around the 2-minute mark, Mike Johnson. All right, let's see what this is all about.
I will recognize myself for an opening statement, and we'll get the hearing going here. Before I provide a few opening remarks, I'm going to play a 2-minute excerpt of a podcast interview with an individual named Dr. Blair Peters at the Oregon Health Science University in Portland. He calls himself the queer surgeon.
These CCs are not good.
Shocking, fully experimental, irreversible, and life-altering invasive procedures that he and others are performing on children to surgically modify their genitals. I want everyone to hear this in his own words, not mine, and take special note of the frank admission that no one has published any studies on these shocking procedures, and they are, quote, as he says, just kind of learning and figuring out what works, unquote.
Okay, who are you quoting? Wait, hold on. Let's take it back.
We'll get the hearing going here. Before I provide a few opening remarks, I'm going to play a 2-minute excerpt of a podcast interview with an individual named Dr. Blair Peters at the Oregon Health Science University in Portland.
Dr. Blair Peters. Mike Johnson is the chair of the subcommittee. Yeah, it's now as loud as I can make it. Like, that's as much as I can do. It did start out pretty quiet. Yeah, for sure. Okay. Yeah, apparently decades of studies is 0 studies. Yeah. Okay, yeah.
He calls himself the queer surgeon, and he boasts about the shocking, fully experimental, irreversible, and life-altering invasive procedures that he and others are performing on children to surgically modify their genitals. I want everyone to hear this in his own words, not mine, and take special note of the frank admission that no one has published any studies on these shocking procedures, and they are, quote, as he says, just kind of learning and figuring out what works, unquote. Later in this video, he admits to performing, quote, huge reconstructive surgery, rearranging anatomy, and then acknowledges that they know almost nothing about the outcomes for these children. And, quote, he says, we'll know more in 5...
I don't actually think that any of this is true. Like, I would not be surprised to find out that this was an entirely fabricated piece of information, because we've been doing phalloplasty for trans people since like 1946, I think was the first one, like nearly 100 years. And yeah, and like also, again, they're all gonna, let's just say it from the beginning, they're all going to hammer on this idea of surgery on children. Meanwhile, every single one of these trans care bans presents an exception for intersex babies. So if your baby is born with non-normative genitalia and you perform like a vaginoplasty on them to try to normalize them and make them like sexable to their future husband, it's, you know, quote unquote, that's all okay according to these people. rearranging anatomy is definitely a lie for minors beyond maybe top surgery in extreme circumstances at 16 with parental consent. Of course, as usual, as always, they don't really do bottom surgery on children for trans-related reasons unless it is extremely rare circumstances where the child is very, very suicidal, right? It's extremely rare. Excuse me. But they don't care about any of that. They don't care about facts, and we're just going to establish that up top. Let's not get too repetitive in this particular segment of coverage, but like just for the sake of saying it, they don't care about the truth.
10 years, and quote, it'll be fascinating to see how all these kids turn out. Wow. With unanimous consent, I will enter the link to this full video in the record of our hearing because everyone should watch it. It is absolutely nightmarish and surreal to hear the description of what these people are doing to the bodies of young children. Please play that clip, and I will say viewer discretion is advised.
Oh, okay, we do have a clip.
So 80% or so of my practice is gender-affirming surgery. So I do facial, chest surgery, and genital surgery. But the majority of my practice, and sort of what I passion-wise, is really genital surgery cases. So I do a lot of vaginoplasty and a lot of phalloplasty. I would just say they're expanding in either direction. So yeah, a lot of adolescents presenting for surgical intervention, but also a lot of people that are like in their 70s sometimes coming in for genital surgery, and then everything in between. But the adolescents for sure present some unique challenges. Obviously, there's great evidence supporting pubertal suppression for a whole variety of benefits. But the one thing that is very new is genital surgery in someone that has underwent pubertal suppression. Not so much an issue in someone with assigned female at birth anatomy that undergoes phalloplasty because we're creating something with free tissue transfer or flap anyway. But a much bigger issue for an individual that's undergoing a penile inversion vaginoplasty because we use all of that tissue to basically create the vulva as well as line the internal vaginal canal. And as a specialty, those of us that do a fairly high volume of genital gender-affirming surgery, we've maybe done a handful of pubertally suppressed adolescents as a field, and no one's published on it yet. OHSU is we're just putting our first series together as we're kind of learning and figuring out what works. But it's really changing things because you don't have enough tissue to line the vaginal canal, so you either.
So this person is very, very clearly saying, we've been doing these types of surgeries for a long time, and certain patients present with unique cases, like unique needs, and we still want to serve that need, but we're going to have to, figure it out a little bit, because it hasn't been prevalent for puberty blockers to be available. So most of the time, these surgeries have been done on fully pubertized genitals, like someone, with a penis, it is very small when they're a child, and then it grows exponentially essentially when they hit puberty, so yeah, if you're working with someone who had puberty blockers and their penis didn't go through that particular change, then you might have to try something else or put them on some kind of hormone or local treatment to make the material grow so that then you can have a better surgical result, right? But so they're trying to sensationalize that process as though pubertally suppressed adolescents being twisted to mean children when he's talking about adults who had puberty blockers as adolescents. Yeah. So we're not even necessarily talking about adolescents in this case. We are talking about people who had puberty blockers as adolescents, which is of course a new field of study. Yeah. But still, these type of surgeries are very rarely done on minors. You can have pubertally suppressed genitalia and be an adult already, So that's what we're discussing here, and that's what's being taken out of context and sensationalized. It's going to be disgusting this entire time.
You have to take a skin graft or take skin from elsewhere or use an artificial product. The way that we're dealing with it is by using a robot, and we're basically performing intra-abdominal components of the surgery. So we're using peritoneum, which is the inner lining of the abdomen, to line most of the vaginal canal. And by doing that, that allows us to use all of the remaining tissue externally to create a vulva.
Peritoneal pull-through vaginoplasty is becoming more common nowadays. So yeah, this makes sense to me.
Try to make also an aesthetic result.
So I'm going to speak the truth here plainly, and I think the vast majority of the American people understand and agree with what I'm going to say. What you just heard there is a little sample of barbarism. This is the mutilation of children, and it should be prohibited by our law. The so-called gender-affirming care is anything but affirming and caring, and the language matters. This is adults deciding to permanently alter the bodies of children who do not have the capacity to make life-altering decisions on their own. And here's some more plain truth that everybody knows.
Oh, so the thing is also, well, let's just mention it up top here. They are not making these medical decisions on their own. They are making these medical decisions with the guidance of their parents and a highly skilled multidisciplinary medical team. So yes, children cannot themselves consent to a medical thing usually. Sometimes they can, in some cases, a 16-year-old is allowed to get an abortion without parental consent. But in basically every other circumstance where a youngling is getting any health care, their parents are there and helping them make the decision, and ultimately, like, the parents are making the decision in cooperation with the kids, so let's not pretend Lux could be a Congress dragon. Honestly, I would be way too impatient. I think that I would get kicked out for decorum reasons. I would have the same problem that, Zoe Zephyr has. If I were a congressperson, I would just say something very frank, and then I would get kicked out because I'm not being polite enough. Like, that's just how it would go. This dude's setting himself up for a job as a React YouTuber? Absolutely. Yeah, I would just immediately be like, I would just call people liars to their face, and I would get kicked out. Yeah, we need that bluntness. I think we need the bluntness. I just think that I would be punished for it.
Until about 15 minutes ago, it's been plainly observed and fully respected by every culture for all recorded history. Sex isn't something you are assigned at birth. It is a natural prenatal development that occurs when every unborn child is in the mother's womb. No one can surgically free themselves from this subjective and obvious.
Again, just ignoring the intersex surgeries aspect of it. Like, yes, plenty of people are born with abnormal sex characteristics, and you forcibly correct them. What's up, Kai? Welcome to the website. Thank you so much for joining us. It looks like they clipped something out of context and edited together the first bit of them saying they mostly work with adolescents, and then them saying they mostly do bottom surgery. Yeah, and there's the question of, like, is that person saying they specifically work with adolescents who come to the clinic, or like, that their clinic mostly works with adolescents? This is the question. Yes, stay hydrated, Horties. Erasing two-spirit by saying every culture believes in only two genders. Truly. Truly.
Fact of life, or free anyone else from it. But today, we see adults inflicting unspeakable harms on helpless children to affirm the adult's own worldview, that gender is somehow fluid, that sex can be surgically altered, that there are no lasting consequences of all this madness as a result of the sex change procedures. What is even more alarming is that the central tenet of the transgender movement and its allies is to exclude parents as much as possible from making decisions about the health of their own children.
The central tenet. We are just gonna lie and make shit up about, like, what trans people believe and think. I hate this dude. I really hope that every terrible thing that he fears happens to him.
Medical professionals and schools increasingly see parents as, quote, transphobic bullies who must be prevented from standing in the way of the medical sexual transition of their own kids. We saw this in my home state of Louisiana recently, where Children's Hospital of New Orleans laughed in the face.
Notice that he said medical and sexual transition of their own kids. Like, tying it in to the idea that it is a sexual thing happening to them. Yeah, let's not... Listen, Uncomfortable. This guy can't handle the fact that because sex is determined by multiple factors, you can change it. Yeah. You hope he's forcibly transitioned. I cannot speak.
Face of a young girl's parents when they attempted to intervene as doctors sought to transition their daughter without their consent. To the left, these aren't your children, see? They're the state's children. And the state should be making parenting decisions.
They're their own selves. It's like, this is a psycho thing to say. Like, parents don't own their children, and neither does the state. Children own themselves. Like, what psycho shit is this that you're like, children are property and I own them? Like, they own their own bodies. What is wrong with you? Man, this dude believes in child marriage. I'll bet money on it.
Decisions. Let's also be clear about something else. Even a parent has no right to sexually transition a young child. Our American legal system recognizes the important public interest in protecting children from abuse and physical harm.
Dude, no. He literally just said, oh, so in this case, the children are owned by the state, I guess, instead of their parents. And then he just literally turned around and said that the state has a vested interest in controlling what happens to children and that parents don't get the right to say. He literally just directly contradicted himself. What the hell, man? Like, I can't believe that he just did that, like, within a 30-second time frame. Like, let me take it back so that you can hear the whole thing through without me interrupting him.
For all of recorded history, sex isn't something you are assigned at birth. It is a natural prenatal development that occurs when every unborn child is in the mother's womb. No one can surgically free themselves from this objective and obvious fact of life, or free anyone else from it. But today, we see adults inflicting unspeakable harms on helpless children to affirm the adult's own worldview, that gender is somehow fluid, that sex can be surgically altered, that there are no lasting consequences of all this madness as a result of the sex change procedures. What is even more alarming is that the central tenet of the transgender movement and its allies is to exclude parents as much as possible from making decisions about the health of their own children. Medical professionals and schools increasingly see parents as, quote, transphobic bullies who must be prevented from standing in the way of the medical sexual transition of their own kids. We saw this in my home state of Louisiana recently, where Children's Hospital of New Orleans laughed in the face of a young girl's parents when they attempted to intervene as doctors sought to transition their daughter without their consent. To the left, these aren't your children, see? They're the state's children. And the state should be making the parenting decisions. Let's also be clear about something else. Even a parent has no right to sexually transition a young child. Our American legal system recognizes the important public interest in protecting children from abuse and physical harm. No matter how liberated you may be, you still don't have the legal right to ignore seatbelt safety laws or minimum driving age law.
He literally just did it in like a 10-second time frame. He said one thing and then said the exact opposite immediately. It's like it's literally like he made a bet with somebody about how blatantly he could get away with lying in this. Holy shit. Like, and it's within the first 10 minutes. Like, how bold is that? To just literally contradict yourself immediately in the first 10 minutes. Wow.
Or drinking and smoking laws for your kids. No parent has a constitutional right to injure their children. Of course, the reach of radical sexual identity politics isn't limited to young children alone. We see this extended to young adults, especially at the university level now. The modern left applauds men.
Yep. So and he's also establishing in the first 10 minutes that they are going to come after adults. They are coming after adults because I guess if you're in college, you're not mature enough to make your own medical decisions.
In women's college athletics, we see universities captured by academics advancing this ideology on students across our country. Whether it's by scalpel or by social coercion from teachers, professors, administrators, and left-wing media, it's an aggressive attempt to transition the young people of our children, of our country. They're doing this psychologically, and now they're doing it even physically. Something has gone terribly wrong, and deep down, everybody in this country knows it. Today, we want to shed light on what this problem is, and hopefully how we can address the problem. Contrary to what some of my Democrat colleagues believe, the scourge of radical gender ideology is very real. The efforts to cover up what's being done to our children are extreme, and the science is on the side of what we all know deep down is morally.
Okay, you're just lying. He's just gonna lie some more. Oh, the science is definitely on the side of the... Yeah, it's not like we've been studying trans care for, like, literally decades. Like, longer than I've been alive, and I'm fucking 30. None of them believe in biology or even religion, no matter what they say. They believe in the power of assignment, of the power to tell someone else what their life will be from birth to death. Yeah, longer than my grandparents have been alive. Well, so I don't actually know... So I know that trans care is as old as the Weimar Republic, but I'm like, the puberty blockers and like trans children having access to medical care it's like, that's newer, but even that is older than me. Yeah, truly, these people are probably the same people who are homeschooled to believe in fucking creationism. Okay, so... We have a Democrat coming up next to repudiate some of this, so hopefully this is going to be a little bit less frustrating. Let's take it back a little bit, and here.
Testimony from our witnesses as we unravel the narrative surrounding the so-called gender-affirming care. I now recognize the ranking member, the gentlewoman from Pennsylvania, Ms. Scanlon, for her opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let's be clear. Congress has no business interfering in parents' freedom to make decisions about appropriate medical care for their children. The idea that politicians are more qualified to judge the medical value or necessity of gender-affirming care than every major medical organization is absurd. Holding a hearing to substitute far-right ideologies for parental judgment exposes the rank hypocrisy of the party claiming to value individual freedom and small government. And so here we are before the Subcommittee on the Constitution and Limited Government. Make no mistake, today's hearing is not about protecting children or parents' rights. It's a cynical and frankly dangerous political attack on transgender children and their families, driven not by science or facts, but by polling and political strategists determined to mobilize conservative voters through fear. So let's start by setting the record straight. Gender-affirming care is safe and effective. It is supported by every major medical association, including the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry, the American Medical Association, and the American Academy of Pediatrics, among others, representing over 1.3 million American doctors. It's just not up for debate. The partisans who characterize gender-affirming care as radical gender ideology are just repeating right-wing talking points to delegitimize critical health care. Access to gender-affirming care is essential to the mental health and well-being of trans youth. This care is tailored to both the mental and physical health needs of patients, as well as their developmental stage in life. And the parents and guardians of these children are involved in every phase of decision-making. There's nothing radical about that. So when our Republican colleagues allege that gender-affirming care raises particular dangers or due process issues, that is fear-mongering at its worst. Picking on already vulnerable kids in order to stir up chaos that they hope to ride to success at the ballot box, no matter how deceitful or dangerous those claims are. As a mother of three, I certainly never found myself at my children's pediatric appointments wishing for medical advice from the House Judiciary Committee. As a member of Congress, I'm appalled by the weaponization of our legislative process to inject politicians into the personal medical decisions of our constituents' lives. I strongly oppose any effort to impose ultra-conservative political or religious views on the medical decisions of American families, whether on matters of reproductive health care or parental decisions to seek gender-affirming care for a transgender child. I know that Americans can be trusted to make their own healthcare decisions without politicians invading their doctors' offices. And I believe parents and doctors when they say that gender-affirming care has changed children's lives for the better, and in many cases even saved those lives. Parents like the mother of a trans teen from Ohio, who shared her family story with the committee.
She's just so based. Like, I got nothing to say. Like, she's just cracking them out. Like, she's really doing it. I want to give her a hug. She's a badass. Yeah, I had no idea that we would have any Democrats who would speak this strongly on this. But I really do appreciate it. Yeah, her middle name is literally gay. So based. So based.
Committee. She told us that because her 17-year-old trans daughter had access to evidence-based, medically necessary, gender-affirming care, puberty was just another phase of a normal and healthy adolescence. She said, and I quote, forcing her to go through the wrong puberty and seeing the impact on her body and her mental health would have been agonizing for all of us. I don't understand why we would allow politicians to make medical decisions for our children. She's right. Banning access to gender-affirming care would violate parents' due process rights, and the federal courts agree.
So this is the question. Like, this is the fundamental question, I think, at this, is, like, the right to due process. Like, the idea here that they're trying to enshrine is that, like, oh, children are not receiving due process of the law if they are, quote, being transitioned by the adults around them, unquote. And like she's trying to say that the due process rights of parents to make decisions for their children would be violated by restricting this access to care. Ironically, the Democrats are far more like for smaller government and individual liberties than the GOP. Yeah, amazing. I hate the new "we care about the science" pipeline of rightists to appeal to atheists. It's very disingenuous. Well, I don't want to get on a whole sidetrack about it today because it really doesn't matter at all. But, you know, Richard Dawkins has fallen off on this. And, like, I think just today even, as of recording and streaming this, he was posting about, or like what had an interview or something about how, oh, you can't change sex, or nobody is non-binary or whatever. And, like, if you claim otherwise, you're being intellectually dishonest. I don't know, like, he's clearly fallen off, and so there is a decent portion of like, atheist people who are against trans rights. I mean, frankly, if you were around back in the day, back in 2016, you remember anti-SJW YouTube, and how one of the staples of anti-SJW YouTube was being anti-non-binary? Like, there was a major conflation between the idea of being a social justice warrior and the idea of being non-binary, or defending non-binary people. So there are a lot of atheists who are anti-trans. Like Thunderfoot, major anti-theist poster, also jumped on the anti-gender train. Like the Amazing Atheist obviously was an atheist channel, also jumped on the anti-non-binary train. So it's not like this is new either, that there is such a thing as secular transphobia, because they will appeal to the science and, you know, not realize that they're being intellectually dishonest. A lot of the liberal atheist culture of early mid-aughts was deeply reactionary. It's frankly no shock whatsoever that it gave way to anti-SJW rhetoric. Yeah, I was there when it happened, and it still was crazy to me. All right, let's continue.
We agree that banning gender-affirming care for minors violates constitutionally protected parental rights, and that politicians should stay out of those decisions. I want to close by reminding my colleagues how much their words matter. By endorsing falsehoods and bullying tactics, members of Congress are helping to promote a culture of discrimination that has increased violence against trans kids and their parents. Cynical political opportunists should not be allowed to use the megaphone of the House Judiciary Committee to promote cruelty and disinformation, particularly when we know that it invites discrimination and abuse of trans children and their families. I must object to this callous and reckless use of this committee's time. And with that, I yield back.
I now recognize the ranking member of the full committee, Mr. Nadler, for an opening statement, if he wishes.
Cool. Yeah, hell, Jon Stewart was a figurehead of that era, and look at him now. Wait, what do you mean? Like, Jon Stewart is he's on side. Jon Stewart is pro-trans. What are you talking about? I was there, Gandalf. I was there the day the strength of the skeptics failed. Oh man, I just watched Lord of the Rings, so that's funny. Thank you very much. Bill Maher. Yeah, true. Bill Maher was like really popular back in the day, back in those aughts, and around the early atheist movement or what have you. He had that movie Religulous, and then now he's very, very reactionary. Yeah, Jiminy Christmas. Okay, how are we doing? By the way, this is probably going to be fairly frustrating, although I think we are going to ping back and forth between anti-trans and pro-trans, so hit like on the stream, or it's later in the future on the video. Please support your streamer. Toss a coin if you would like to. Share the video as per usual, and continue joining us on this deep dive, because we're going to keep going for probably a while. This is now going to be Jerry Nadler.
Mr. Chairman, today's hearing...
the last speaker was Mary Gay something. I can't remember her last name. Sondland, maybe? Scanlon. Mary Scanlon. And then now we're going to hear from Jerry Nadler.
...is an all-time low for the Republican majority. In my 3 decades in Congress, I have taken part in plenty of hearings where I did not agree with the choice of topic, to say the least. But I am absolutely disgusted by the Republican majority's bullying, bigoted framing of an issue that would otherwise be worthy of serious discussion. What we are witnessing today is nothing less than a taxpayer-funded platform for congressional Republicans to bully transgender kids who are already some of the most vulnerable members of our community. Things are already tough enough for these kids and their parents. A mental health survey conducted by the Trevor Project found that transgender youth experience high risk of depression, anxiety, and suicidal thoughts. It can't help that they are under siege by Republican-dominated state legislatures hell-bent on passing anti-trans bills.
No
According to the
kidding.
Human Rights Campaign, more than 76 of these bills have been signed into law. resulting in transgender youth losing access to life-saving medical care, comprehensive and inclusive education, and activities, spaces, and facilities. That is why it is so infuriating that congressional Republicans are using their megaphone to single out transgender kids and their parents by labeling their very existence to be a social problem, practically accusing...
Is he from New York? he's got a very brusque kind of thing. I know that I have him on ×2 speed, but still, I like this guy. He's fun.
...their parents of being criminals for seeking safe, life-saving, mainstream medical treatment for their children. The last thing trans kids and their parents need in their lives is for politicians in Washington to jump on the anti-trans bandwagon just so that they can fearmonger for their 5 minutes of fame. Let me be crystal clear.
Oh, he is from New York.
Should not stick its nose into a parent's decision to seek gender-affirming care for their children. Indeed, it is almost comical that the Republican majority of what they have named the Subcommittee on the Constitution and Limited Government is holding a hearing allegedly on due process to argue that politicians, not parents, should make decisions as to what medical treatment is best for their children. The legal theory underlying this farcical hearing is bogus, but you don't have to take my word for it. Every federal district court that has considered the constitutionality of state laws banning gender-affirming care has ruled that such bans violate parents' constitutional rights.
I think that there was one that slipped through on the whole concept of like gender-affirming care isn't like a tradition of our country thing, but yeah. He's got mob connections. Don't ask me how, just a feeling. No. This is not a mob guy. This is like, is he like Jewish? I think he might be kind of Jewish, or at least he gives those kind of vibes. Not like in a bad way. I mean, like, but like Bernie, he kind of reminds me of Bernie. Yeah. Clip me out of context on that one for sure. That's a definite clip. Neat. We have neat. Yes. Thank you very much. Someone needed to do it.
These decisions were issued by courts in different parts of the country and by judges from across the...
Comfy Jewish uncle. Thank you, uncomfortable. That's, yes, like Jewish granddad kind of person, you know? Like, good vibes.
...ideological spectrum, including 3 judges appointed by former President Trump.
True.
I trust parents and medical professionals, not politicians, to make decisions about their children's health when it comes to gender-affirming care, and so does the Constitution. That said, judging from the lineup of witnesses, it appears that there's no limit to the topics over which Republicans want to bully trans kids and their parents today. Undoubtedly, transgender youth's participation in sports will be discussed because Republicans think it is a winning political talking point. But the facts do not justify the fears that Republicans and their political allies gin up over the fairness of trans girls participating in girls' athletic teams, nor the further stigma it attaches to transgender children. What recently happened in Utah illustrates my point. Last year, Republican Governor Spencer Cox vetoed a complete categorical ban on transgender kids from participating in athletics matching their gender identity, which the Utah legislature sadly overrode. In vetoing the law, Governor Cox noted in a letter explaining his decision that of the 75,000 high school kids participating in high school sports in the state, only four were transgender. And only 1 transgender student was playing girls' sports. I
don't even need to say anything. These are, I've been saying all of this for like a year. More than a year. Listen. I've been saying all of this. There are not that many trans athletes. Like, the evidence does not support discriminating against them. Precious, if you want to join the good chat, it's the top link in the description. Any of you all who are on YouTube, first of all, hit like really quick. Second of all, if you are interested in joining the on-screen chat with the custom emojis on my website, where you also have the option to directly support me, since YouTube likes to take 40% of your donations when you donate to me, come to the website, luxander.net/live. Chillin' and vibin'. Chat actually continues to function after the stream is over, so if you wanted to, you could stick around and chit-chat a little bit, so... The Dems binged my channel before the hearing. They had to educate themselves, so they came to me. They learned it from me! Yeah, Republicans have gone so far that now the Democrats are the party of small gov. Yeah, it's gone full circle. The secret is that Republicans were never the party of small government. They were just lying.
Have 75,000. Governor Cox also noted a study that showed that 86% of trans youth reported suicidality, and 56% of trans youth have attempted suicide. Mm-hmm. Let those numbers sink in for a moment. A majority of trans youth in this study reported that they attempted to kill themselves. And out of 75,000 high school student athletes in the state, only 4 were transgender, an infinitesimally small minority of all high school students in Utah. Governor Cox's letter further described a sentiment that I sincerely wish his Republican colleagues on this subcommittee shared. The governor wrote, quote, "Rarely has so much fear and anger been directed at so few. I don't understand what they are going through or why they feel the way they do, but I want them to live. And all the research shows that even a little acceptance and connection can reduce suicidality significantly." Close quote. Parents of transgender kids want the same things every parent wants for their kids: to go to school without fear of bullying, to participate in extracurricular activities like sports if they wish, and to be accepted by their peers and their community. This hearing will only further put those things out of reach for those parents and their children. And far from protecting children, this hearing will only further stigmatize and endanger them, because it sends a message that transgender kids and their parents do not deserve the law's protection. To any transgender people or family members who may be watching this hearing, I want to say that Democrats on this committee see you, we appreciate you, we value you, and we will continue to fight for you. This hearing is a despicable exercise and a contemptible use of the subcommittee's time and power. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back.
Listen, I know that, like, you know, when Biden is like, high five, we got your back, like, that doesn't really mean a lot to me. Like, the the emotion with which these people are speaking and like these strong terms in which they are speaking, it's like, I know that they don't have a chance in hell of protecting us. Like, they just don't, you know, like, I'm sorry, but like, that's just where I am at on this. I'm optimistic about my life personally, but very pessimistic about the direction of our country. And I don't think they're going to succeed, but it does feel good at least to hear them say it, you know, and to know that they are impassioned about this. Like, you know, he's like, this is a despicable use of our time here on this committee. Like, it's ridiculous. All right, let's keep going.
Without objection, all other opening statements will be included in the record, and we will now introduce today's witnesses. Miss Paula Scanlon
Witnesses.
is a spokeswoman and an advisor to the Independent Women's Forum and the Independent Women's Voice. She's a former collegiate swimmer at the University of Pennsylvania, and she speaks out about what it was like for girls competing alongside and sharing a pool and locker room with a transgender woman. Miss Chloe Cole is an advocate and someone who's experienced gender transition procedures. After being diagnosed with gender dysphoria,
of course,
she began
Chloe
to transition,
Cole.
and she detransitioned.
So just to keep in mind, they only have like one detransitioner that they fly across the country repeatedly. And they claim that this is an epidemic, but if it were an epidemic, I feel like you should be able to find more than like the one detransitioner who like is still clearly gender dysphoric anytime you see her talk about it. Like, yeah, of course, there are very few detransitioners. The sped up version of people talking sounds like a middle school presentation, except the middle schoolers are very intelligent. Ooh, yeah. I couldn't find where Paula Scanlon placed compared to Leah Thomas. Yeah, Paula... Is it hard to find because she didn't actually do that bad? Or did she even race against her? I think that the issue with Paula Scanlon wasn't that she raced against Leah Thomas, but that she was forced, quote-unquote, to share a bathroom or, like, locker room with her. Like, forced to change in the same space, like, apparently is traumatic to her. So I don't even think she raced against Leah. It was not a matter... Like, it's interesting, because usually when we hear about Leah Thomas, it's to do with her as a racer. But in this case, it's to do with her as a woman in the bathroom, you know? Where'd chat go? Where'd chat go? There it is. Do they realize that they're breaking HIPAA policies by talking about that detransitioner? I don't know that they are, if she's there to willingly testify. Anyway.
At age 17 and now speaks about her experiences. Ms. Taylor Greene had wished to note today that she had the pleasure of meeting and speaking with Ms. Cole last year when you bravely spoke out and spoke in support of her bill to protect Children's Innocent Act in front of the whole nation at a press conference. So thank you for your courage. Dr. Jennifer Bowens is serving as the director of the Center for Family Studies at the Family Research Council. Her research focuses on
Family Research Council is a hate group.
And advancing policies that will best serve the health and well-being of families and communities. Ms. May Melman is a senior fellow at the Independent Women's Law Center. She previously served as the Deputy Solicitor General for the state of Ohio. Mr. Shannon Minter is the legal director for the National Center for Lesbian Rights. The NCLR advocates for lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender people. Ms. Miriam Reynolds is a licensed professional counselor and an art therapist. She's the mother of a transgender son and resides in the state of Texas. We welcome...
Okay, so we have a mother of a transgender son. I'm just sitting here waiting. Excuse me. I'm just sitting here waiting, like, are there any trans people on this panel? You invited a detrans person, of which there are a minute percentage. But are there any trans people here? Like, I'm sorry, can I testify? I would like to testify. I would like to be heard. I would like to represent. I would like to have a voice. It doesn't have to be me, but I would do it. Oh, Mr. Minter is a trans man. Okay. Okay, so we do have one transgender individual who works with, he said it was like with the lesbian such and such. So he's working with an LGBTQ organization. So, okay. Okay, thank God. Thank God we have one trans person. What's up, Raven? Yeah, so everybody who's here, don't forget to hit like, toss a coin to your streamer if you got it. Always appreciated. And let's continue with this. Oh my God.
All of our witnesses, and we thank you for your time in appearing today. We'll begin by swearing you in, so if you'd rise and raise your right hand.
I wonder if there's even an even number. I hope that there is at least an even number. I wasn't paying attention to everybody's names and credentials, TBH. So I don't know how many pro and anti there are. I hope it's even.
Do you swear or
well, it can't be even because there's 5 people. So I think that what's happening here is that they have 3 anti-trans witnesses and 2 pro-trans witnesses. So they could not muster an even number of individuals, apparently.
Under the penalty of perjury, that the testimony you're about to give is true and correct to the best of your knowledge, information, and belief, so help you God. Thank you. Let the record reflect the witnesses have answered in the affirmative. And you can be seated. Please know that your written testimony will be entered in the record in its entirety. Accordingly, we ask you to summarize that testimony in 5 minutes. You have a light system there, and you need to push the button to speak so we can all hear your voice. And Ms. Scanlon, we'll begin with you. You go first.
Good morning, Chairman Johnson and Ranking Member Scanlon, and members of the subcommittee. I'm Paula Scanlon, a spokeswoman and advisor for the Independent Women's Forum, and a former NCAA athlete. I am here today to share my personal story. I started swimming at a very young age, and by age 8, I was swimming competitively, and by late middle school, I was devoting at least 20 hours per week to swimming. I gave up countless Christmas holidays, weekends, and social events to work towards my goal of swimming Division I, a dream that came true when I began swimming for the University of Pennsylvania. While I'm not an NCAA champion, I hold the New England Independent School League record in the 400-yard freestyle relay, a record that has stood since March of 2017. In September of 2021, Leah Thomas began participating as a member of the Penn women's team. Leah, formerly Will, had personal best times in every freestyle.
Okay, we have to make sure to get the jab in there. We have to make sure to include the dead name, because that's necessary to enter into the record. What a cunt.
Event that were faster than the women's world records. Once the season began, Thomas was leading the country in multiple events.
Hold on. I gotta take it back a second. I wasn't listening. I tuned her out. I didn't care to hear what she had to say. Let me take it back a second. Hold on.
Will had personal best times in every freestyle event that were faster than the women's world records. Once the season began, Thomas was leading the country in multiple events, while only placing in the top 500 in those events on the men's team. Thomas later became an NCAA champion in 500-yard freestyle, the first NCAA champion in our women's team history program. While many of you already...
Also, we're not, like, looking at the fact that she had a marked decrease in her performance. And also, like, she won some races but lost other races. On the same day that she won first place, she also got 8th place in a different race. So let's not pretend like she was dominating. So we have 2 Leah Thomas related. Man, that poor woman, that poor girl. Yeah, exactly. Freestyle was only one category of race. There were 7 different categories of races. Yeah, the longest winded way to say you took an L. I think, is this the one who did so badly that she didn't even place? Or, no, she did not race against her, I don't think. I don't even know if they were in the same ones, but I'm sure she'll tell us.
You know this. What you do not know is the experiences of the women on the University of Pennsylvania swim team. My teammates and I were forced to undress in the presence of Leah, a 6'4" tall biological...
So she did not race against her. She's not, like, going that way. I think that she's going with the, like, yeah, the bathroom angle of, like, we were forced to dress in the bathroom with her. Oh, no. It's like, don't forget. When I was a kid, which was not that long ago, like 20 years ago, it was common for there to be contemplation about the sexual orientation of women in locker rooms. So this rhetoric will not stop with transgender women, and it did not start with transgender women. Okay? Let's not forget.
Thomas later became an NCAA champion in 500-yard freestyle, the first NCAA champion in our women's team history program. While many of you already know this, what you do not know is the experiences of the women on the University of Pennsylvania swim team. My teammates and I were forced to undress in the presence of Leah, a 6'4" tall biological male, fully intact with male genitalia, 18 times per week. Some girls opted to change in bathroom stalls, and others used the family bathroom to avoid this. When we tried to voice our...
Also, no commentary about what Leah did, because I would bet money, as most trans people do, that Leah was trying to change in a private space, or at least hiding her body fully intact. Yeah, let's call attention to her genitalia. Why are you looking at it? She is not bothering you. She is just dressing. Like, as per usual, trans people are just being normal, and people are assuming that there's some weird shit going on. And, like, again, same thing. Like, oh, I can't believe you made us change in the bathroom with a lesbian. Jesus fucking Christ. Yeah, it literally started with lesbians. Right. Like, let's not pretend.
Our concerns to the athletic department, we were told that Leah swimming and being in our locker room was a non-negotiable, and we were offered psychological services to attempt to re-educate us to become comfortable with the idea of undressing in front of a male. To sum up the university's response, we, the women, were the problem, not the victims.
Yes,
we were expected to
correct. You are a bigot and the problem.
To move over and shut up. Our feelings didn't matter.
No, they don't. Again, facts don't care about your feelings.
Uh-oh, I'm so sorry, Paul baby. Facts don't care about your feelings. Your feelings do not justify bigotry. I'm so sorry, but your feelings do not justify bigotry.
Yeah, LMAO, I'm transphobic. Go to therapy then, bitch.
It was gaslighting and fear-mongering women to validate the feelings and identity of a male. As an attempt to voice my concern about...
Of a transgender woman. Like, yeah, so let's, again, we're gonna reduce transgender women to being exactly the same as cis men. Like, oh, you're inherently male. See, I couldn't actually... I think that I would make too many funny faces. If I was up here testifying with these people, I would be, like, rolling my eyes and, like, holding my head in my hand, like... And I would be whispering dumb bitch under my breath. Like, I would not be good to have on there.
Situation we were forced into, revealing the unjust and unfair treatment. I wrote an op-ed for the Daily Pennsylvanian, the student-run newspaper. I approached this from a scientific, statistical perspective.
From a scientific perspective? Oh, no.
My engineering background to discuss how Y chromosomes cannot be changed by any surgical procedure or systemic therapy. This bylaw.
Oh wow, I used my engineering degree to talk about the Y chromosome. She's just like revealing how dumb she is. Maybe go back to swimming. That would probably be better for you.
Logical fact lends itself to athletic advantages that cannot be mitigated by lowering testosterone levels, which are readily apparent in sports competitions and locker rooms. The Daily Pennsylvanian published my article on the evening of February 10th, 2022. Only a few hours later, my piece was retracted. I was given no notice nor reasoning. Again, I was silenced for my dissenting viewpoint and felt my First Amendment rights were denied by my university.
You can speak on your own platforms. That doesn't mean that the university has to host your speech. Again, why do people think they have a right to a platform? You have the right to speech, but you do not have the right to a platform. Go start a YouTube channel, girl. Like, sorry, like, why don't you, like, just lower yourself to the level of being like me and Ben Shapiro and all the other illustrious streamers out there? Like, chill out, girl. Yeah, being good at math doesn't make you good at genetics and sexual dimorphism. Jesus Christ. Congress, I am being gaslit by the gender mafia. Please do a law.
This is representative of a greater issue, the destruction of free speech. Today, any discussion maintaining the sanctity of women's spaces is labeled transphobic, bigoted, and hateful.
So again, you being called bigoted, which you are, is not a violation of your free speech. You can continue saying dumb shit, and we can call you dumb and transphobic and bigoted because you are. Yeah, the speaker stops talking. In the back, you just hear Lux going, my feelings, my feelings. I cannot promise that I would not be going, like, directly in front of the face of this subcommittee, but then that would get me kicked off, so maybe I would behave. Maybe I would be a good boy. I don't know, maybe.
What's bigoted and hateful is the discrimination against women and the efforts to erase women and our equal opportunities, dignity, and safe spaces. One might ask, why do I speak so passionately about issues that seem hypothetical, or some may perceive as only impacting a small number of women? This is not hypothetical. This is real. I know women who have lost roster spots and spots on the podium. I know of women with sexual trauma who are adversely impacted by having biological males in their locker room without their consent. I know this because
So, yeah, I mean... yeah, true. This girl's got some broad shoulders. Are we sure? Are we sure? She's about to use her sexual assault experience as a weapon against Leah Thomas, a woman who has done nothing to harm her. Truly, for trans people in sports, it's an epidemic.
I am one of these women. I was sexually assaulted on June 3rd of 2016. I was only 16 years old. I was able to forgive my attacker, but violence against women still exists. Let us not—
I forgave my attacker, but I'm going to now attack the rights of, like, transgender women who had nothing to do with my assault. She's literally like, I forgave my attacker, but I'm still going to weaponize my trauma against other people. Yeah, thank you, Uncomfortable. As someone with sexual trauma, it is not justification for bigotry. And again, you were probably sexually assaulted by a man. What does Leah Thomas have to fucking do with that? Nothing. Like, stop blaming women for men's behavior. Ultimately, Paula. Jesus.
Don't forget the viral Me Too movement.
Oh, and yeah, too. Yeah, thank you, James. James points out accurately that transgender women have a higher rate of sexual assault than cisgender women. Cisgender women are sexually assaulted at a rate of approximately, 20%? 1 in 5. And the rate of lifetime sexual assault for transgender women is more like 33%. So more like 1/3 of transgender women have an experience of sexual assault. So, yeah, the way she's saying this, it could make someone who's halfway listening think that Leah was the one that assaulted her. Like, what does Leah have to do? It's especially telling that she would say she forgave her attacker while using this as a justification for the anti-trans bullshit. Yeah, you're weaponizing trauma that someone else gave you in order to, like, discriminate against other people. And, like, of course, claiming the victim status, as women often do. I was gonna call her a white woman, but she does look like she might be, like, Filipino or Asian or something along those lines. So I'm not gonna say, like, white women tears, but she's kind of, like, doing that, though. Like, that is what she's doing. I was sexually harassed constantly and flashed when I was in the psych ward. However, none of the cis female patients were singled out in that way. Right. Like, transgender women are literally at higher risk for sexual assault than cis women. And yet cis women use their experiences of assault at the hands of cis men to argue that trans women don't deserve equal access to public spaces. Like, I'm sorry, you do not deserve public spaces away from people that you don't like. And you being triggered by someone else's body existing in an area near you is a you problem. That is a therapy problem. Go to a trauma-informed therapist, Paula. God.
Empowered female victims to speak up. It casts a spotlight on the widespread prevalence of sexual assault and abuse, including in scholarly and educational institutions. Individuals on this committee have previously stated violence against women is all too common. I'm grateful for those members who have brought awareness to the violence against women in the past, but unfortunately, there's still much to be done. As a sexual assault survivor, many policies pushed today completely ignore my experiences and many women like me. I ask the members of this committee, please consider this issue outside the lens of political affiliations and understand the true impact of ignoring the realities of womanhood. Future generations.
Just change in private, Paula. No one cares. No one cares about you. You do not matter. Change in private. Be a bigot in silence. Shut the fuck up. No one is depriving you of a right to say things, but you should choose to shut the fuck up.
Depend on us.
She listed no impact. Exactly. She did not list an impact. She's like, it bothered my feelings. Like, I felt weird and bad about it. Therefore, other people don't deserve rights to public spaces. My Fifi. God, I hate this. I hate this woman. Good gracious.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak here today.
And thank you for being here and for your courage, Ms. Scanlon. Ms. Cole, you're next, and you can begin.
Thank you for your courage.
My name is Chloe Cole, and I'm a
Oh God, Chloe Cole, of
Another way to
course.
put that would be, I used to believe that I was born in the wrong body, and the adults in my life, whom I trusted, affirmed my belief, and this caused me lifelong, irreversible harm. I speak to you today as a victim of one of the biggest medical scandals in the history of the United States of America. I speak to you in the hope that you will have the courage to bring the scandal to an end and ensure that other vulnerable teenagers, children, and young adults don't go through what I went through. At the age of 12, I began to experience what my medical team would later diagnose as gender dysphoria. I was well into an early puberty, and I was very uncomfortable with the changes that were happening to my body. I was intimidated by male attention, and when I told my parents I felt like a boy, in retrospect, all I meant was that I hated puberty, that I wanted this newfound sexual attention to go away. I looked up to my brothers a little bit more than I did to my sisters.
So this is why, like, I think it's good to have therapy be a part of the process, you know? She's really got her script down pat. She doesn't have her script down pat. Her eyes are glued to the screen. Oh, God. Like, to be clear, I do think that therapy is a good part of the process. It is helpful, you know? Like, I just don't know if she's genuine. And, like, honestly, she just, like, her experience gets weaponized against me in such a way that it's really hard for me to care. I don't want people to think that I'm, like, immune to empathy for people who have, like, who actually, like, do regret parts of their transition, you know? Like, I think there's a possibility that if I had gotten top surgery before, I might not be psyched about it, but I also should have been in therapy to deal with that, you know? Like, I chose not to get any surgery because I was not sure, and it would have been external pressure that forced me to get top surgery anyway, because it was mostly because other people would perceive my gender the way I wanted them to until they saw my chest, and so it was external pressure to do that. So now I know that I like my body the way that it is, because it doesn't matter what other people gender my body as. That's not my problem. I don't need to change my body just to indicate that I am gender nonconforming or whatever, you know, like that I'm non-binary. But like Chloe, like if she genuinely is genuine about this, I do feel bad for her, but the fact that she is a violent bigot means that I'm not required to be empathetic toward her. Like, and that's something that people miss when I talk about detransitioners on the channel. People are like, oh my God, you don't have any empathy for this person. It's like, I know people who are detransitioners who regret aspects of their transition, like regret top surgery, and like don't weaponize that experience against trans people. They still acknowledge that for most people, access to gender affirming care is life-saving, you know? And a lot of those type of detransitioners don't regret their transition overall. They just regret the things that they can't change that they did, right? And like, I have sympathy for that. And I have sympathy up to the moment that you start to say, oh, trans people don't deserve access to care. You know, that's where we run into problems. And that's why I don't care about Chloe Cole. Like, so just to be clear, she started some shit with me, is the situation. Like, she is attacking me and my rights. So that's why I hate her, not because she has hypothetical regret, you know? Based on statistics, it would be best for Chloe if she didn't burn all her bridges. Yeah, because the statistics show that most people who detransition retransition later. So, and we actually did see Kira Bell, if you remember Kira Bell, who was part of what she was part of what started to limit the access to trans care for youths in the UK. She, the last time I saw, was not going by the name Kira, and on their Twitter page, they had a beard in their picture, which, like, frankly, if you're a cis female who's dysphoric about looking like a male, why do you have a beard? Why aren't you getting laser hair removal surgery? Are you sure you don't have any wealthy donors who would be interested in helping you detransition medically? Interesting. Aren't a lot of detransitioners as such because they can't afford it? Well, yeah, so that's another thing, RPG Cookie, that I think that, like, there's a distinction here. I personally don't consider if you just stop taking your medicine for a period of time to be a detransition. To me, a detransition is disaffecting from identifying as trans and sometimes going reverse on the medical aspect of it. So, like, I have been on hormones and off hormones over the past 7 years or however long, and I have at no time considered myself detrans, even though I was like, I'm quitting testosterone now for a while. Like, I'm still trans. That's what I identify with. I have changed my body, and I don't want it to change back, you know? Like, I actually think it's weird when we say that people are detransitioning because they paused their medicine for a period of time. Like, if you lose access, it's not like you're disaffecting from being trans. I don't know. That's just my opinion. Anyway, hit like on the video. Really quick. It's fast, it's easy, it's free, and it helps the channel. Yes, for the most part, detransitions occur because of the societal thing. You know, people detransition because their family rejected them and they want to be accepted, and then later they retransition because they realize that it's not worth it. No worries, RPG. I am happy to answer questions because this is a good opportunity. We're talking about the issues, you know, we're getting it all out there. I am always happy to educate. That's part of my job here. And my other part of my job is to flex, but it's censored right now because you have to donate in order to get the flex. It's censored. You can't see it. All right? Yeah, and let's not pretend like the right is going to be very kind to detransitioners. They're useful right now, but they are just as much a degenerate as any trans person, according to the right wing, the Reich wing.
I came out as transgender in a letter I sent on the dining room table. My parents were immediately concerned. They felt like they needed to get outside help from medical professionals, but this proved to be a mistake. It immediately set our entire family down a path of ideologically motivated deceit and coercion. The gender specialist I was taken to...
Oh, by the way, she has a trans sister who is still trans. That's another thing about Chloe Cole. She's like, it started our entire family down this road, and, like, her sister is trans, and the family is very upset about the fact that Chloe is doing this.
Taken to see. Told my parents that I need to be put on puberty blocking drugs right away. They asked my parents a simple question. Would you rather have a dead daughter or a living transgender son? The choice was enough for my parents to let their guard down, and in retrospect, I can't blame them. This is the moment that we all became victims of so-called gender-affirming care. I was fast-tracked onto puberty blockers and then testosterone. The resulting menopausal-like hot flashes made focusing on school impossible. I still get joint pains and weird pops in my back, but they were far worse when I was on the blockers. A month later, when I was 13, I had my first testosterone injection. It's caused permanent changes to my body. My voice will forever be deeper, my jawline sharper, my nose longer, my bone structure permanently masculinized, my Adam's apple.
I really don't think that she doesn't pass. Yeah, I'm not slowing it down. Sorry. Like, careful, Lux, censored porn is a new genre. Uh-oh. Yeah, if she's really trying to be a woman, why is she wearing a shirt that puffs up her shoulders? Like, she's not even clocky, right? Like, am I crazy? She's not even clocky. It's totally fine. Like, I think that maybe she got top surgery, so yeah, I can understand being upset about that, you know. You know, you can get implants, but obviously it's like, you know, women who get mastectomies have the same kind of problem, like where they, like, for cancer reasons, you know, they have to do reconstructive surgery and everything. And I get it, it's like difficult if you do genuinely identify as a woman. Does anyone know how she's claiming the joint pain was caused by transitioning? I mean, frankly, a lot of trans people have connective tissue disorders. So when the video is this fast forwarded, no, it's just 2 hours long. We don't have time to do it at 1x speed. But yeah, I mean, I would really just bet that she, like many other trans people, has a connective tissue disorder, and that it just started to manifest itself, and she started to notice when she was a teenager because she became more aware of her body, as a lot of people do. Like, I didn't notice that I had a connective tissue disorder until my adulthood because I was not tuned into my body. Yeah, this medieval peasant level understanding of cause and effect. I was on a medication, and some completely unrelated thing started to happen, and I'm gonna blame it on that.
More prominent. My fertility unknown. I look in the mirror sometimes, and...
My fertility unknown. You're fertile. Calm down.
I feel like a monster. I had a double mastectomy at 15. They tested my amputated breast for cancer. And I was cancer-free, of course. I was perfectly healthy. There was nothing wrong with my still developing body, or my breasts, other than that, as an insecure teenage girl, I felt awkward about it. After my breasts were taken away from me, the tissue was incinerated. Before I was able to legally drive, I had a huge part of my future womanhood taken from me. I will never be able to breastfeed.
It wasn't taken from you. You consented, like, as part of a medical team, you know? And, like, you doing something medically that you regret does not mean that other people should not have legal access to that care, okay? We do not do this in any other area. If we based whether things were legal or accessible based on regret, then we would not have, like, knee surgeries or nose surgeries, which minors do get sometimes. And, like, minors get boob jobs too. And people often regret those. But, like, you know, but if it's cis-affirming, you know, if you were assigned female and you go with your mommy and it's a little girl's day to go down to the plastic surgeon's office and get your boobies bigger, like, again, these people don't care about that. These people just don't acknowledge the areas where teens do make permanent decisions about their bodies with their parental consent, and that the regret rate is much higher for all these other things. Oh yeah, true. Gosh, she didn't like that puberty that she went through. She didn't like how her body was changing. Damn, can't imagine what that's like. Girly there sounds like a trans woman. Yeah, like, if anything else, you are still understanding what it is like to be trans, because that's what trans women go through. I really don't understand why, like, detransitioners who are assigned female don't become best friends with trans women. Because if you're worried about your hair growth, like your hair started to recede, trans women have advice for you. If you're, you know, trying to figure out how to, like, pad your breasts in a way that is more convincing, trans girls got your back. If you had facial hair growth and you need to, like, cover it up with makeup, trans girls have your back. Why are you rejecting all of this help that would be present for you? Anyway, fucking Chloe Cole.
Struggle to look at myself in the mirror at times. I still struggle to this day with sexual dysfunction, and I have massive scars across my chest, and the skin grafts that they took on my nipples are weeping fluid today, and they're grafted into a more masculine positioning, they said. After surgery...
How are your nipples still weeping fluid when you got surgery when you were, like, 15? There's no way. There's no way. I'm sorry? That's a lie. I'm sorry, but that's a lie. If your nipple grafts after, like, how old is she? In her 20s? In her late teen, like, maybe she's 19, 20? After, like, 5 years, if your nipples are still not healed, they would have already fallen off by then. Like, there's no way. Yeah, true, people regret getting married, but the right wing doesn't say no marriage allowed. They're not trying to raise the age of marriage to 25. In fact, they're trying to lower it in many cases. Literally, Chloe's entire grift shows that the right acknowledges that gender dysphoria exists, and it's awful, and they just do not care about the trans people who go through it. They will let 200 trans people suffer in dysphoria if it means saving one cis person from dysphoria. It is inherently cis supremacist. Yeah, that's a really good point, Mama. Like, they understand that gender dysphoria is terrible. Like, they think, like, oh, they are imagining a hypothetical little girl who is, like, her parents are forcing her to cut her hair and make her identify as a boy because of gender ideology. But when that exact same thing happens to a transgender girl, like, who wants to grow her hair out, but her parents force her to cut it, like, a lot of trans girls, like, haven't gotten a haircut in, like, 10 years because of the trauma that they have from being forced to cut their hair as children. And it really, even for cis kids, having your hair cut without your consent is, like, it can be traumatizing. Kids cry, they get really upset. Imagine, like, that gender aspect of it on top of that, you know? Yeah, the nips are a secreting Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle ooze to this very day. True,
My grades in
Numenal.
school plummeted. Everything that I went through did nothing to address my underlying mental health issues that I had. And my doctors, with their theories on gender, thought that all my problems would go away as soon as I was surgically transformed into something that vaguely resembled a boy. Their theories were wrong. The drugs and surgeries changed my body, but they did not and could not change the basic reality that I am and forever will be a female. When my specialist first told my parents that they could have a dead daughter
Okay, I'm glad for you. That's great.
or a live transgender son, I wasn't suicidal. I was a happy child who struggled because she was different. However, at 16, after my surgery, I did become suicidal. I'm doing better now. But my parents almost got the dead daughter promised to them by my doctors. My doctors had almost created the very nightmare they said they were trying to avoid. So what message do I want to bring to American teenagers and their families? I didn't need to be lied to. I needed compassion. I needed to be loved. I needed to begin in therapy to help me work through my issues, not affirming my delusion that by transforming into a boy, it would solve all my problems. We need to stop telling 12-year-olds that they were born wrong, that that they are right to reject their own bodies and feel uncomfortable with their own skin. We need to stop telling children that puberty is an option.
So again, if she has this intense regret and she means it, I think that that's bad and I'm sorry for her. I don't care. Like, again, to be clear, the number of trans people who experience this because they didn't have access to gender-affirming care, they are more important than her. There are more of them, and they are more important than her. She's literally telling trans people that they are born wrong for being trans. Like, I just don't even know what's going on in this woman's head. Like, okay, you can regret something, that's fine. How many trans people regret not having access to this related care, to this, like, gender-related care? More of them. There are way more trans people who are like, I am trying to figure out my life now as a 30-year-old going through puberty because I was not allowed to be myself as a child. Like, I don't care. I'm sorry, I don't care and you don't matter. Compared to all those people who need access to this care and don't get it. You don't matter compared to them. Like, I don't care.
That they can choose what kind of puberty they will go through, just so they can choose what clothes to wear or what music to listen to. Puberty is a rite of passage to adulthood, not a disease to be mitigated. Today, I should be at home with my family celebrating my 19th birthday, and instead I'm making a desperate plea to my elected...
Except that they don't want to have anything to do with you because your sister is trans.
My elected representatives learn the lessons from other medical scandals like the opioid crisis, to recognize that doctors are human too, and sometimes they are wrong. My childhood was ruined, along with thousands of detransitioners I know through our networks. This needs...
Oh yeah, thousands of detransitioners? Sure, why don't you produce, like, a few? Maybe, like, a few of them. Except for the same, like, 2 detransitioners all across the country getting flown around. Destination flights. All paid for, of course.
Stop. You alone can stop it. Enough children have already been victimized by this barbaric pseudoscience. Please let me be your final warning. Thank you.
Today's your birthday?
It is.
You're a beautiful, brave woman. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Ms. Reynolds,
I hate her.
you're next. You may begin.
Good morning. My name is Miriam Reynolds. I'm a licensed professional counselor, a fifth-generation Texan descending from a long line of conservative Christians, and I'm the mother of a transgender son. I'm honored to be here today to give my testimony and tell you the story.
Okay, so this is the classic. Okay, this is what we're seeing more and more across the country, is we're seeing people who are conservative Christians who then have a transgender child and their minds are changed on this issue, or we're even seeing Democrats who are like, I ostensibly support gay people, but, like, I don't know about all this trans stuff. I'm not really sure about it. And then their kid comes out as trans, and they're like, oh, shit. You know, so I'm really interested to see what Miriam has to say, because, yeah, she has a transgender child, and she leads off by saying that she comes from a long line of conservative Christians. She's basically saying, like, I have had to rethink my entire worldview in order to deal with this and accept my son. So, yeah, imagine actually loving your child enough to accept them.
Story of my incredible child. He recently became an adult, and I will still refer to him as a child. His name is Cameron, and he is 18 years old. He recently graduated from high school and is embarking on adulthood with a gap year before college. Cameron told us he was transgender when he was 11 years old. He was clearly dealing with something, but we didn't know what it was or how to help him. But then he told us. My husband and I had the same instinct to tell him that we love him no matter what and always will be there for him. We knew we needed to affirm him from our years in working with foster youth. But we had no idea what to do next. We were scared. We didn't know anyone who had a trans child. We had never even heard of gender-affirming care. I prayed that it was a phase, but already knew that it wasn't. The signs had been there all along.
Yeah, she's like, I prayed that it was a phase, and then we realized that it was not a phase, you know?
We just didn't understand them. We thought he was a tomboy. He refused to wear anything pink or girly and was the only girl on the boys' football team for many years. His best friends were always boys. There were a lot of signs looking back. As parents, all we really want for our children is for them to be happy and healthy. Prior to receiving gender-affirming care and socially transitioning, my child was not happy and was not able to be his true self. I didn't want him to have to face the struggles of being transgender, but I did want him to be happy and himself. At times, I grieved my little girl and felt as if she were...
So, like, acknowledging that I did not want my child to go through the difficulties of being trans, but obviously, like, not having access to transition was making them quite unhappy. Hit like if you agree that trans kids are much happier after they get access to gender-affirming care, because they are, by and large.
We're gone. It was hard on me at first, but I was able to put my child's needs before my feelings and find him the care he needed. I could see that my child was happier and felt more and more comfortable the more he was affirmed. We were living in Colorado at the time, and through some research found a comprehensive program at a local hospital that provided health care to trans kids. We found him a counselor, immediately began trying to provide him with the best health care we could find. We felt very fortunate to have access to a multidisciplinary team of professionals who could help us figure out what options we
Okay, true, yeah, so she started with counseling, and they had a multidisciplinary team. In my notes, I'd written under Chloe's timestamp, it's also apparently her birthday, which is just sad. Yeah, like, imagine being so dedicated to the grift that you go to fucking Congress on your birthday.
we had for Cameron's healthcare. I could not imagine having to manage legal restrictions of medical care in addition to talking to our extended family, all while learning ourselves about treatment options and caring for our child. Later that year, we decided to move to Texas. We began researching leading programs in the field of trans healthcare and were able to find a similar program. We chose to move to a town based on proximity to the clinic. We knew we needed the support of experts. We had an appointment scheduled before we even arrived in Texas or had any idea of our health insurance coverage. Our multidisciplinary team at the clinic consisted of physicians, nurses, social workers, psychologists, medical students, my son's counselor, the school counselor, my husband and I as parents, decision makers, and my son as a patient. We filled out many, many surveys and questionnaires. Myself, Cameron, and his dad were all required to do so. We had extensive interviews with social workers and psychologists who had requested a letter from Cameron's previous provider prior to our first appointment. The intake process was lengthy and meticulous. The process was daunting, but I was grateful that the team was so thorough. I want to make it clear that the care we received was slow, very thoughtful, provided with the utmost care and consideration. There was no rush, absolutely no coercion, lots and lots of double checking and making sure we were all on the same page. At the time, Cameron felt it was all moving too slowly. In retrospect, we can see clearly that it was the best thing for us to move so slowly on medical intervention so we could properly weigh the pros and cons. My son was asked at every appointment if he wanted to stop treatment or if he had any concerns about treatment whatsoever. Counseling was taking place the entire time. Cameron's counselor would also meet with the doctor and my husband and I before medical interventions were decided upon. The interventions my son has had with extreme consideration, consent, and discussion have been counseling first and foremost, puberty blockers, and hormone therapy. We have not even considered any kind of surgery.
So counseling, puberty blockers, and hormone therapy. This has been a rigorous process. Like she's saying, it's a multidisciplinary team. We're going, it's been a lengthy process. He hasn't had surgery yet. He's now 18. Her son is now 18 and has not had any surgery because that has not been considered necessary in his care so far, right?
My child is 18. If any physician or member of the treatment team had suggested surgery to us when Cameron was a child, we would have said no thank you and immediately gotten a second or third opinion.
She said if any of their providers, their medical providers, had suggested surgery for him at that young age, they would have said no and sought a second or third opinion. So at no point in her son's process was surgery suggested to them as a possibility. They were saying no, we don't want to do that. Her son was saying that's not what we're here to do yet. Maybe he'll get top surgery as an adult. Maybe he won't need it. Maybe he got on puberty blockers young enough that he doesn't really need that. Doesn't really need top surgery. And thank God. That is one of the things that is very useful about having access to puberty blockers, is that if you are assigned female and you don't want breasts, then you can just never grow them in the first place and therefore not have to get a $10,000 surgery. So really, if there's an idea of, oh, we don't want to, fatten the purses of these surgeons and everything, well then provide puberty blockers, okay? Thank you.
With the benefit of hindsight, I have no doubt that the healthcare my son accessed was life-saving. I'm grateful that we have had access to this incredibly crucial, medically necessary healthcare for our son without the interference of our government. Cameron is thriving now. He's doing better than he ever has. He has wonderful friends. He's dating a little. He's spoken out publicly and has the love and support of his whole family, including 2 grandparents who are staunch conservative Christian Republicans. We can all see that this is who he is. The grandparents don't fully understand what being transgender really means, but they love and accept him. I'm asking you today to please allow parents the right to access and consent for healthcare for their children. This decision should be made with parents, the child, and the child's medical providers without government interference. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Reynolds. Ms. Mailman, you're next. You may begin. Push the button for me.
I'm May Mailman, Senior Fellow with the Independent Women's Law Center, the legal advocacy arm of Independent Women's Forum and Independent Women's Voice. I'm also a mother to my 8-month-old daughter. I'm testifying here today in support of her future, her freedom, and her equal opportunity. My fellow panelists have covered the pernicious effects of gender ideology on children and their futures.
Gender ideology.
I'm here to address
Yeah, note that Mike Johnson thanked Paula Scanlon and Chloe Cole for their bravery. He did not do the same for Miriam Reynolds. This mother who did the years and years of work and endured the bigotry of conservatives to do what was best for her child because she actually loves him. Right. Yeah, there was no thank you for your bravery, because I guess her bravery just doesn't count. Yeah, Ms. Mailman, right? May Mailman. That's from back when surnames were job descriptions. Some ancestor of hers was a mailman, I guess.
another way in which gender ideology destroys women and girls, and that is by dissolving legal protections for women in athletics.
Sure.
Until recently, female student athletes might have thought that they were protected by Title IX of the Education Amendments of 1972, and they were. That's because Title IX is very simple. It prohibits discrimination on the basis of sex in programs run by schools that accept federal money, and that's basically all of them. And those programs include sports. Title IX recognizes that providing equal opportunity for the sexes can mean recognizing inherent differences between the sexes. That's why the Title IX statute explicitly allows schools to provide different living arrangements for the sexes. So too in sports. In introducing Title IX, Senator Birchby explained that Title IX would not require sticking women on men's football teams. And that's why Congress explicitly asked that the initial Title IX regulations include reasonable provisions considering the nature of particular sports. And so for 50 years, the Title IX athletics regulation has explicitly permitted sex-based teams where selections for such teams is based on competitive skill or involves a contact sport. Importantly, the regulations also require that schools must provide equal opportunities for members of both sexes. Unfortunately, in April of this year, the Department of Education proposed a rule that, if adopted, would flip Title IX on its head. The proposed rule would modify the athletic regulation to let schools compete on teams consistent with their gender identity unless a particular school can demonstrate to the satisfaction of the Department of Education that this policy would be too unfair or unsafe. In other words, women are no longer granted female sports teams as a given. We have to prove that we need it. Of course, we do need it. Studies show that even testosterone suppression cannot eliminate the male advantage.
So again, we've talked about this on stream before and in videos before, and I just want to clarify, women can be competitive, like cis women can be competitive against cis men. And like, frankly, the fact that they're in separate leagues is part of what makes their performance, like, on average, lower. If you sit down two groups of girls to take a test, a math test, and while you're doing the description of the setup for one group of girls, you mention, so we're going to do this math test, and generally girls score a little bit lower on this than boys. And then you have another group of girls who you don't say that to when you're prepping them for the math test. The group that you said girls are bad at math to, they do worse on the same questions, the same test. Like, so literally, if you just have the mentality that you're bad at something, you'll be bad at it. Yes, she's from the Family Research Council, which is a dark money funded think tank along the lines of the Heritage Foundation and the ADF. Their job is to launder talking points by creating bunk studies and writing bigoted legislation templates. Like this, it's just a bunch of fake shit. She's like, I'm arguing on a hypothetical. That's her whole deal, is she's arguing on a hypothetical because there is no concrete evidence. There is really no evidence at this point that trans women have a significant advantage over cis women in sports after a certain amount of time on testosterone blockers. Like, after a while on hormones, your bodies are basically the same. Your performance is basically the same. The biggest difference between women's and men's athletics is in the funding. That's another reason why women's athletics suffers, is because they don't have as good of coaches. They don't have as good of facilities and equipment. That's one of the biggest predictors of sports outcomes, is whether you have good funding for the program. So yeah, let's just address the lies. Let's just address these lies.
Except schools are not going to be allowed to say that as a general matter, post-pubescent biological males playing women's sports puts female athletes at risk of injury and losing playing time, medals, and privacy. No, schools are going to have to prove to federal bureaucrats that allowing a biological male on a women's team would be unfair or unsafe in this particular sport with respect to these particular athletes.
They're not biologically male.
No school is going to want to take on that litigation risk, and so schools are going to allow biological males to compete on women's sports. This will directly and overwhelmingly harm female athletes who are far more likely to be displaced by a male athlete than vice versa.
Okay, so trans women can already play on all these sports. It's not like we're newly making this legal again. They are able to do this already, and we have not shown that women, like cis women or women's sports in general, are collapsing under the weight of male invasion. There's no evidence of this. I wonder if she's on the other side of the witness table from Ms. Reynolds because she doesn't want the loving your kid stuff to actually rub off on her. True.
And far more likely to face risks in private spaces like locker rooms. And even if it were a good idea to reduce educational opportunities for women like this, the Department of Education may not do so unless this body has authorized it. But Congress has done no such thing. The Department of Education says that the Supreme Court's decision in Bostick versus Clayton County means it can pretend that Title IX addresses gender identity. But the Department of Education is wrong. In Bostick, the Supreme Court said that Title VII of the Civil Rights Act prohibits employers from firing someone just because they are transgender. The decision says that an employee's sex is not relevant to the selection, evaluation, or compensation of employees. Athletics and education, however, is governed by a different law, Title IX. And when it comes to athletics, sex is not only relevant, it is often dispositive. As superstar Serena Williams said, men's and women's tennis are completely different sports. We live in a nation of laws and not bureaucratic command. That means the Department of Education must find its authorities in the laws that this legislative body has considered and passed. It may not use gender ideology to twist a simple anti-discrimination statute into a statute that reduces opportunities for women. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms.
Again, not reducing opportunities for women, and also fuck trans women's opportunities, I guess, as per usual.
Mailman, Mr. Minter, now you may begin.
Thank you. My name is Shannon Minter. I'm the legal director of NCLR. It's a legal organization that represents LGBTQ people. I'm 30 years with NCLR, 20 years as its legal director. I've represented many transgender young people in cases involving discrimination and harassment in schools. And
so Minter is a lawyer. Shannon Minter is a lawyer, I think, a legal director at the National Center for Lesbian Rights, and he is a transgender man, according to people in the chat.
Welfare system, the healthcare system, other areas. Recently, I've been involved in federal challenges to state laws that ban medical care for transgender young people and completely ban them from school sports. I really appreciate the opportunity to address this committee. Parents should have the freedom to make healthcare decisions for their transgender children. Parents want what's best for their children. Americans differ about a lot of things, but
some people just walked out. Who just walked out?
Point on which we strongly agree, and that is that parents, not the government, are best situated to make medical decisions for their own children. There's a lot of misinformation about transgender children, youth and adolescents. Gender dysphoria is very rare, less than 1% of the population. Most people in this country don't know a transgender person, much less have they met parents with transgender children. For most people, most legislators, this seems like a new issue, but medical care for transgender adolescents has been available for more than 20 years. The very same medications being prescribed for transgender youth have been prescribed for other young people for other conditions for more than 40 years. There is a substantial body of research that shows these treatments work. They improve mental health outcomes, quality of life, social relationships, family relationships. They dramatically reduce suicidality. One federal judge, after a full trial, said there is now extensive clinical evidence showing excellent results for these treatments. The medical standards for these treatments, as has been noted, have been endorsed by every major medical association in this country: American Medical Association, American Academy of Pediatrics, American Psychological Association, many more. These standards are evidence-based. They require a rigorous multidisciplinary assessment before diagnosing a child with gender dysphoria. They take a conservative approach to treatment. Those standards have been in place for a long time. They are not new. What is new is this recent massive overreach by state lawmakers to ban medical care for transgender youth. These laws, these recently passed state laws, they prevent doctors from doing their job. They prevent parents from getting the medical care that their children need. And that is why every federal district court, all 6 of them, after hearing all of the evidence, evidence have concluded these bans violate parents' rights, they violate equal protection, and the claims they put forward to justify the bans have no basis. These decisions, has been noted, been issued by a wide range of judges: Arkansas, Alabama, Florida, Indiana, Kentucky, Tennessee. In every case, the state officials supporting these bans had every opportunity to back up their false claims with actual evidence. Each case, they have failed. These bans pose a serious threat to the health and safety of transgender young people across the country, and I urge the members of this committee to reject any federal attempts to replicate that harm. As a transgender person myself, I have benefited from decades of access to health care, legal equality, support, been able to marry, have a family, pursue a career, participate in my local church and community. It is very disheartening to see the protections that have given me and other transgender people so many opportunities to thrive and to succeed now just being needlessly taken away from young people. Healthcare bans conflict with medical expertise. They rob parents of their right to make medical decisions for their children. They have devastating consequences for young people's lives. Decisions about children's medical care should be made by the parents who love them, not by politicians who know nothing about a child's life or history or circumstances, and who won't be the ones having to watch a young person they love suffer the devastating consequences of going without needed medical care.
True.
Thank you, Mr. Minter. And Dr. Bowens, last but not least.
Just thank you and no thank you for your bravery again.
Chairman Johnson, Ranking Member
we have
Scanlon,
one more.
members of the subcommittee, thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. My name is Dr. Jennifer Bowens, and I'm a licensed therapist, clinical researcher, currently serving as the director of the Center for Family Studies at Family Research Council.
Okay, so you have 4 anti-trans people on this thing and 2 pro-trans people on this thing? Is that really how we're doing this? 2/3 of the witnesses are anti-trans, and 2 of them are paid shills by the Family Research Council. Or, yeah, so she's FRC. The other one, they're both FRC. They're both from the Family Research Council. Yeah, no, yeah, seems a bit unfair. Just a little bit. What the fuck? God, I hate this country.
Based on over 25 years of experience as a clinician providing trauma therapy to children and as a researcher investigating the psychological effects of traumatic stress, I'm here to express my concern about what has been termed gender-affirming care. I've considered it a privilege to practice, research, and train future clinicians and be a part of a discipline aimed at protecting and bringing healing to the most vulnerable in our society, which are children. But when it comes to gender transition procedures, my field is not operating as a helping profession. Instead, it is actively causing harm. Historically, children have been treated as a special and vulnerable class in the psychological and research fields. Caution has been applied to children in light of the fact that they do not have the neurological capacity to understand lifelong decisions. Professional and research ethics tell us that we should...
Children are not stupid. They are able to understand the concept of long-term consequences, okay?
Proceed very cautiously with regard to interventions for children when empirical evidence is weak or the research methods are in the early phase, as with this case. We should avoid interventions that pose unnecessary risks, particularly when the symptoms are known to change with maturation. But risk avoidance is not what's happening with gender transition procedures. Instead, we have too many cases like Mike. Mike was 9 years old when he first saw gender...
I'm just probably not even going to respond to a lot of what she says, except to just to point out that she's lying, because she's just a liar. Like, she is a professional liar, and nothing she says should be taken without, like, a severe degree of skepticism. Hit the like button if you hate this woman as much as I do, because, man, wow, I am so angry.
Therapist. I was deeply saddened when I read his gender therapist case notes, where it was reported...
Oh, yeah, this is true. Also, thank you, James in the chat says, people regret circumcision, and they usually don't even get a choice in that. Why aren't conservatives trying to ban circumcision? Yeah, because, again, that's like a normalizing cisgender thing.
That Mike couldn't distinguish between fantasy and reality. Instead of investigating these symptoms, the therapist wrote in the treatment plan, which included puberty blockers, guidance on social transition, and education for future hormonal and surgical procedures. This treatment plan was enacted without regard for this child's known diagnoses of autism, possible OCD, and possible parental diagnoses, which...
Autistic people are allowed to be trans, okay? Please suck my dick, you dumb fucking bitch. And please just go choke on something, because I hate you. Like, frankly... I don't love that this pro-trans argument was an argument for parents' rights to decide what's best for their kid, not about trans kids' bodily autonomy with support and informed consent. I mean, yeah, but that's the whole thing, though, is like that the child and the parents and the doctors all make the choice together. And like the framing of this entire thing. So it's not that the pro-trans argument was about parents' rights. This entire discussion is about the conflict, allegedly, between parents' rights and like children's rights versus like what the government says you're allowed to do, you know? Yeah, I would like to see this person in hell, for sure.
Were reported in the case notes. Mike is just one example of how so-called gender-affirming care is in direct opposition of our knowledge regarding development and our understanding of good research and treatment.
Yeah, also, is that a HIPAA violation? You're just giving medical information about someone who's not here?
And there are many reasons why I have concerns, but I'll just share a few with you.
But let's be clear. Mike is fake. The person that she just made up is a made-up person. Everything that this woman says is poison. She is a liar and a snake, and she should not be trusted.
One, these interventions are being endorsed based on consensus, not evidence. In the case of gender-affirming care, the term evidence-based does not mean that this practice is standing on the merits of solid research findings addressing gender dysphoria. Instead, it refers to a vote by those who are ideological supporters of the practice. Compared to other psychological disorders found in the DSM-5 TR, gender dysphoria is currently being treated with the most invasive interventions connected to a psychological issue with the lowest quality of evidence to support that practice. And two, the success rates of non-intervention for gender dysphoria for children already exceed what most psychological...
There's terms like low quality evidence in the scientific community, which just refers to the fact that, like, you can't do double-blind studies on children who need medicine, you know? You can't, like, give children who need medicine a placebo in order to see what happens, you know? You can't ethically do that. So some types of evidence are collected by, like, just doing the thing and then observing the outcomes instead of having a double-blind, like, some people get the treatment and some people don't. Like, there are medical situations where you can't do that. So that's the only reason why it's considered low quality evidence. But for more than 20 years, according to Mr. Minter, you know, trans people have been provided with affirming care as youths and have grown up to be completely adjusted adults and have a chance to, like, be a member of the church, like Minter said, get married, have a family, you know. It's also impossible because people would know they got the placebo because they didn't get the effects of hormones. Yeah, like, you know, it would not be possible. That's another thing. Thank you, Mama, for pointing that out. It would be very apparent soon. So the people in the study wouldn't even be able to effectively say, like, this is working or not, because, like, it's not the same placebo effect. Like, it's not like you take a pill that someone tells you is ibuprofen and then you start to feel better because your brain thought that it was ibuprofen, you know? If you don't start having the effects within, like, a month, then the jig is up, you know? The whole idea behind a double-blind study like that is that people don't know which medicine they've gotten, but it's very easy to tell in a very short period of time. So there's no way to do this effectively or ethically except to give the children the medication after giving a rigorous psychological screening and then observing the effects. And then doing that a bunch. And as we've done that, the observable effect is that the overwhelming majority of children who are confirmed as gender nonconforming and persistent, they go on the hormones and they stay on them, like, for the rest of their lives, you know? Yeah. When trans people with complete androgen insensitivity don't get any effects from testosterone, they go to the doctor and go like, hey, what the fuck? Yeah, true. Oh my God, this is taking forever.
Psychological interventions have. In most cases, 85% or more of those experiencing gender dysphoria will desist if they are left alone. This is a higher rate than most well-established in research.
That 80% thing is based on, like, the total number of people who came into the gender clinic with questions. Only 20% of those who just had questions in general were, through the rigorous process, determined to be transgender. Yeah, so, like, again, lying.
Psychological interventions, and with success rates this high, it is actually unethical to intervene. 3, the research and practice around this issue does not properly account for competing diagnoses and variables. So in one example, a report from the UCLA Williams Institute found that 45% of transgender identifying people reported childhood sexual abuse. As a trauma clinician, I can tell you that when someone experiences sexual trauma, it is not uncommon for that person to hate parts of their body or want to get rid of those aspects of themselves that made them vulnerable to abuse. And 4, it is often claimed that a failure to provide these interventions increases the risk.
So again, the idea that being sexually abused made you trans instead of, like, the fact that you were intrinsically transgender made you vulnerable as a child, you know? Like, just the causation relationship that she's putting forth here. Like, yeah, the idea that, and this is especially an idea that's used to attack transgender men, the idea that, you know, you were raped as a child or whatever, or you were sexually assaulted as a teenager, and therefore you reject your womanhood because it was what made you a victim. Like, success rate was the child not being trans? Is that what she said? I missed it. I'm not going to go back. There's too much.
For suicide. This approach is actually unethical, and it's a clear departure from the practice of empowerment and self-management, which are important goals of mental health practice. This claim is also not supported by the literature. Despite years of empirical study, there is no definitive understanding of the etiology in the suicide literature. 5, after a review of the literature, other countries have actually backed away from gender transition procedures, and the list now includes the United Kingdom, France, Finland, Norway, Australia, and Sweden.
Yeah, places where trans people are being deprived of care and are committing suicide on years-long wait lists. Those are great examples.
6, last, gender-affirming care has created a monopoly on treatment options, as it demands that it is the only way to treat gender dysphoria. By comparison...
It literally is. Like, gender dysphoria doesn't resolve unless it receives treatment. Thanks. Hit the like button if you agree.
We can look at Cochrane collaboration, for example. There are 245 meta-analytic reviews of varied treatment options for depression. Yet when it comes to gender dysphoria, there's only one path currently prescribed to help someone, and that's
it literally, because gender dysphoria is only resolved by resolving the thing that's your gender is not being perceived correctly by other people, and your body doesn't match your body-brain map thing. Yeah, it's literally the only way to treat gender dysphoria. Sorry, dumb fucking bitch.
Someone else. Researchers and clinicians should be innovating solutions to heal distress, not coercing kids onto a path that tells them that they need to remove or change physical parts of who they are in order to be whole. This is why I'm calling on you to act on behalf of children. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry for that buzzer background noise. Didn't rattle you at all. We will now proceed on to the 5-minute rule with questions, and the chair recognizes first the gentlewoman from...
Okay, so yeah, four people who are anti-trans and 2 people who are pro-trans. Cool. This is representative. This is definitely representative. Sure. Absolutely.
Wyoming for 5 minutes.
Questions?
First of all, I want to say thank you for being here. You are 4 incredibly brave women, and you're my heroes. You have been willing to put yourselves out there to address something that many people want you to stop talking. They want to prevent you from talking. Don't listen to them. Make sure that you continue to use your voice to educate us, to educate the American people, because these children are worth saving. Dr. Bowens, I want to thank you for being here. And in your testimony...
Eat my dick. Trans kids matter.
You reference what I think is one of the more important points in this debate, and that children are treated as special and a vulnerable class in the psychological and research fields. You reference the experience of Tuskegee, and to me the important takeaway here is that controversial so-called healthcare practices, treatments, and experience have not always withstood the test of time. Outside of your reference, I think of how lobotomy was once a form of care we wouldn't even consider today, and in fact has been banned in countries throughout the world. In this debate, I have wanted to replace the misleading
We're comparing gender-affirming care to lobotomies now.
Terminology, gender-affirming care, especially as it relates to children, because 1, it replaces the biological reality of sex, and 2, because it falsely suggests that using the term affirming that there is anything good going on here. There are only 2 sexes, boys are girls, and girls are girls.
This isn't a question. Questions end with a question mark. Get to your question, Harriet.
One cannot become the other. In fact, and especially when it comes to children, it seems
to me that... It kind of sounds like you're just using this opportunity to spout your personal beliefs. Ask your fucking question.
Gender-affirming care is better described as sexual lobotomy. It is treatment that is fundamentally and permanently alters the sexuality and medical and psychological well-being of these patients. It causes irreversible sterilization and serious long-term medical complications and long-term reliance on pharmaceuticals. These treatments and surgeries are controversial
This is not opening statements.
Practices that seek to change a person in a manner which is not actually achievable, and they will not withstand the test of time. Dr. Bowens, are there medical professionals in the U.S. and abroad already rejecting these surgeries as any form of serious medical care?
Yes, thank you for your question. And we are seeing an increase of medical professionals speaking out. Just this past week, there were 21 doctors that came out and said, we are very concerned about this. The own AAP, American Academy of Pediatrics.
Is she going to direct any of her questions to... Yeah, this is a trend for the entire hearing. Yeah. Are they going to direct any questions toward the trans people and the trans supportive people on the panel? Like, or are they just going to give these fucking idiots a platform to lie the entire time? I think that it's going to be that.
Was referenced earlier, and 80% of their membership has been asking for a review of the literature, and they've been denied that review by the...
Someone please give me a donation. It has been far too long since I have had a dono for having been putting up with this shit for like 2 hours.
Upper echelon. So there are, and I listed many other countries, there are people who are standing up because they're seeing the harms done to these kids like Chloe Cole.
Can you discuss why referring to these treatments as life-saving treatment is so extremely misleading?
Yeah, it's misleading for a number of reasons, because for one, the whole impetus of the scientific method is that we're
discount Velma.
We're supposed to be in a process of, is this the right approach or not? And this whole discussion about saying that it's life-saving automatically says there's no room for discussion, there's no room for scientific inquiry, because the science is settled, which is, it's an amazing statement, because the suicide literature has been around far longer than...
They won't even acknowledge Reynolds or Minter. Seriously, I can't recall one time a Republican even talks to them. Yeah, okay, that's, okay, thank you for setting the tone.
Transgender literature, and the suicide literature is not conclusive. So we have a real right hand doesn't know what the left hand's doing in this case.
It seems to me what we've been living through for the last couple of years is a government that wants to suppress any type of speech that it disagrees with. And we're seeing that with the industrial censorship complex that we've been talking about. And it appears that that's exactly what's going on here. They want to stop the debate because they know that they can't win it. Dr. Bowens, my last question is what is the success rate of sex change operations?
Well, we have, it's hard to find longer-term data with children, but what the data that we do have, which is probably the most reliable data point available, is from a Swedish study, and it looked at over 10 years, which is really important because regret doesn't just happen a year after some sort of transition. And what you see is a suicide rate that's associated with 19 times higher than the general population.
Well, actually...
So again, thank you, C-Tangle. Thank you for the $5 dono. You have made this last hour feel a little bit better. Thank you. She's, oh my God, I don't even know what she just said. Like, what even did she just say? Hold on, let me take it back like 30 seconds.
Change operations.
Well, it's hard to find longer term.
So she just made, she's like, oh, the suicide rate for post-transition people is 19 times higher than the general population. That isn't a useful number. We need to compare it to the number of suicidal people who are pre-surgery. You got to compare trans people to trans people, pre and post-surgery. Because yes, trans people on the whole, whether they're pre or post-surgery, have an increased suicide risk because of like a lack of social acceptance. Like, as per usual, it's transphobia and not something intrinsically about being trans, which is the problem. But of course, these people are going to stigmatize transness in every way possible.
Percent. There's a 100% failure rate for sex change operations, isn't there? Because it's not possible to change your sex. That's right.
Oh my God.
100% failure rate for these procedures. That's right. You can't.
100% failure rate for these procedures because you can't change your sex. Like, if the goal is to change your genitals, and so it's successful in that way, but because you can't intrinsically change your sex, God, I'm gonna drop a slur before the end of this stream.
Your sex. Thank you, and I yield back.
Thank you. The gentlelady yields back, and the chair recognizes the gentleman from New York for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Minter, a federal court has stated that, quote, under the WPATH standards of care and endocrine society guidelines before puberty, treatment is focused on support for the child and family. Some prepubertal children may socially transition. No medical interventions are indicated or provided for the treatment of gender dysphoria in prepubertal children. Do you understand this to be a correct statement?
Yep.
Talk to the mic. Yeah.
It's actually not. Is the button red? Sorry.
Okay, there you go. My apologies. Yes, sir, that is 100% correct. Before puberty, there are no type of medical or medication interventions whatsoever. We're talking about transgender adolescents who've hit puberty and who would be eligible to be considered when it's medically appropriate.
What does the federal court mean in saying that, quote, no medical interventions are indicated or provided for the treatment of gender dysphoria in pubertal... Actually, you just answered that. What does the federal court mean in saying that some prepubertal children may socially transition?
Yeah, the only type of medical support or support
He's
offered
asking, what does social transition mean? Yeah, bossing say moment.
to transgender youth before puberty is to just let them be who they are. And I can't stress enough, this is about kids becoming someone they're not. This is about kids being who they are. So just allowing them to live with a name, clothing, etc., that reflects who they really are. And it's remarkable. They found that when research has found that when children are supported in that way, they are indistinguishable in terms of their mental health outcomes from non-transgender kids. They're just as healthy and really thrive when they get the support, that simple support that they need.
Thank you. Mr. Minter, what have courts said about laws that restrict transgender individuals' access to medically necessary care?
That they severely burden parents' fundamental rights to make medical decisions for their own children, and that they're blatantly discriminatory, that they violate the guarantee of equal protection because they do something that has just never been done before in this country, which is single out a particular group of people, transgender young people, in order to deny them medical care.
Thank you for bringing up the 14th Amendment. Holy crap.
Thank you, Mr. Minter. A federal court has stated that, quote, the risks of gender-affirming medical care are not categorically different than the type of risks that other types of pediatric health care pose. For many adolescents, the benefits of treatment greatly outweigh the risks. Do you agree with this statement?
Absolutely.
What are the benefits of receiving gender-affirming care?
They're enormous. They produce positive mental health outcomes for these young people. They dramatically improve their quality of life. They do better in school. They develop positive social relationships. We heard that with Ms. Reynolds' testimony. Their relationships with their family improves, and their gender dysphoria is alleviated, and any depression, anxiety, suicidality is dramatically reduced. There's a study from 2022 that found a 73% reduction in suicidality among kids who had received this treatment.
Ms. Reynolds, thank you very much for being here today. Is there anything about you, your son, and other...
I guess it's pretty standard. Like, the people on the panel who are anti-trans are going to be asked questions by the anti-trans committee members and vice versa. So, like, the pro-trans committee members are going to call mostly on the pro-trans, like, witnesses, I'm guessing, on account of the fact that, like, I mean, why would you... It's like, is there a cross-examination part of this kind of hearing? I don't know. That's going to be fun to see. I doubt it, though.
Families like yours that you think the subcommittee and the American people should know?
I would like to just add one thing, if I could, and that is that with the sports debate, I just want to share my son's process with that. So, as I mentioned, he was the only girl on the boys' team for many, many years when he was a child, and when he transitioned, he completely dropped out of playing sports altogether. So that left a big hole in his life. It's nothing that he did anymore, and it was because he felt the pressure from all of this kind of political discussion around this, and dropped out completely. And I think that story is probably way more common than the isolated cases.
Thank you, Mr. Minter. What would you say...
And points out... she accurately points out that most trans children don't get to play sports. They don't even try to play sports. It's a fair few very brave young people who stick with the sports. But because this is such a question, like, a lot of us just go, it's not worth it. It's not worth it to be the subject of that kind of scrutiny. It's not worth it that the other kids on the team might be transphobic or their parents might be transphobic. Like, maybe the kids are not even having an issue with it, but the parents are. Like, yeah, this is... I was in swimming but left because I came out as non-binary and didn't know where I could go. True. Truly. Yeah, this doesn't even account for non-binary people.
About what we heard from Ms. Cole about her experience with gender care and her unfortunate experience.
I thank her for sharing that story, and how I would respond. The most important thing to understand, that story is the exception, not the rule. Vast majority of young people who receive these treatments are getting them after careful assessment and because they really need them. This has actually been studied. We know that 98% of young people who receive these treatments continue to receive them into adulthood. I think what that reflects is the care behind these standards of care and the assessment process and the care with which gender specialty clinics in this country are providing this care.
So she is part of the 2%?
Apparently so.
Than't you. My time is expired. I yield back.
Gentleman's out of time. Thank you. The chair.
Thank you. Like, at least they kind of alluded. Like, I love the little face that she made, though. It's like... what is the percentage of people? Like, yes, there is a small percentage of people who do have earnest regret, like 2%. So she is part of the 2%, who slipped through the cracks of the system. A positive trans resource, by the way, just got released by Jamie Dodger. The book is The T in LGBT. Oh, nice. I didn't know that Jamie was writing a book. That's neat.
Recognize the gentleman from California for 5 minutes.
I wonder if Ms. Cole would like to respond to that.
I got to see a trans-identifying child who had a positive outcome with their transition. And the reason why most...
So she's allowed to respond to him, and she's like, I have yet to see a transgender child who had a positive outcome. Okay. Like, your personal... you know all the trans kids. Chloe Cole has personally gone to the house of every transgender child in the United States to personally vet whether they had a positive mental health outcome, like positive life outcomes. And of course, she is an expert, I guess, on this, like, because she has personal regret. She knows what happens with all the other trans people.
Most children who are affirmed continue on the transition, either as adolescents or as adults.
Hold on.
Because once you've either socially transitioned or gone on blockers or start the other interventions like surgery or hormones, it's incredibly difficult to go back. The social ramifications are...
It's irreversible and they have no choice at that.
She's claiming that people only stay trans because it would be too much of a burden to detransition.
Is what you're saying.
In every single way.
There are two aspects of the question. Let me dispose of the first one involving sports, the fairness of allowing biological males to compete against females in sports. The second is a more complicated one, whether children should be subjected to irreversible transgender surgical or chemical procedures at all. But Ms. Scanlon, can you tell me if a female claiming to be a male has ever dominated in men's sports?
No, and actually in my league, there was 2 instances where a female athlete transitioned to the men's side.
So this is very much a one-way street.
Yes.
It's biological males competing against women dominate those sports. There's not a case of...
Wait, did she just say that there were females who transitioned to males and then participated, and then he was like, okay, so that doesn't even happen? Like, oh my God, this is so frustrating. But of course it was going to be. We knew when we started it was going to be frustrating. We're almost at 100 likes for the stream. So that's something. That feels okay, I guess. That makes it a little bit better. No trans women have ever dominated in women's sports. Right. Where are all of the transgender Olympians dominating? Leah Thomas won 1 race. And no lie, there is currently a trans man dominating in his MMA. You know, like, just because Miss Bauer hasn't actually, like, looked it up doesn't mean that it's not happening. Trans men are successful in sports, you know? Even trans men, like Cameron, Mrs. Reynolds' son, Cameron, he is a transgender man who defected from sports. He stopped doing sports because of this whole question about transgender athletes. But he could have been competing. He was competing against boys. He was like, before he transitioned, he was the only girl on the football team, you know? But we desist from doing sports because of these controversies, effectively.
A biological female going transgender and dominating a male sport. Am I correct?
Yep, you're correct. And it's obvious that would be the case. Because
If that's the case, then simply this is an attack on the integrity of women's sports. And I wonder why my Democratic colleagues, who often posture as feminists, can't see this plain truth. Ms. Scanlon, would it be wrong simply allowing transgender men and women to compete in their own sports competitions while we preserve the fairness of women's sports?
Separate but equal, baby.
Yeah, I believe all individuals should have a right to play sports. I think sex-based categories make the most sense.
So transgender males should be allowed to compete with other transgender males in their own sports category. Nobody's got a problem with that, I think.
Yeah, if that's what governing bodies decide is a fair solution, then I'm for that. I believe that female spaces should be protected in female sports.
Now, the more weighty question is who should make the decision to subject a child to such a procedure on behalf of that child?
Nobody.
Well, long before governments existed, there were mothers and fathers who had children. So the family is the most fundamental governing unit. It's established by nature itself. So I think it therefore follows that parents have a fundamental natural right to raise their children according to their own best judgment. It can't be absolute, of course. You can't kill them. You have to feed them and clothe them and shelter them. And society has a role to play in being sure that you do. But it's intrusions into the decisions of parents over the raising of their children. That needs to be very cautious, very limited, and very humble. Now, the ranking member in her opening statement makes this point once you strip away all of the partisan rhetoric. And it seems to me that there are two issues here. The first is the effort in states like California to bypass parents' judgment, to subject their children to transgender procedures against the parents' judgment, or even to hide this from the parents. That's going on in California right now. So I want to be sure I understood the subcommittee's ranking member correctly.
So this is a lie? Like, I don't really think that there are instances where they try to push medical care on children whose parents aren't affirming. In fact, if you're trans and you're a young person and your parents aren't affirming, you're fucked. You're not going to get medical care. Sorry, sucks to be you. That's how it actually works. No, like maybe if you're 16, you could potentially maybe get treatment, in the sense that because you're nearly an adult, because a 16-year-old can petition for emancipation, you know, maybe. Highly doubt it though.
Like she too opposes government replacing parents' judgment.
Yeah, there's 5 trans people in each state. You're like, who are they going to play against?
Over the decision on transgender procedures for their children. Am I correct on that? Am I correct on that? I yield to the gentlelady to answer.
I'm sorry, I was...
Hold on. Let me take it back. What did he say? I'm going to take it back like 30 seconds.
Against the parents' judgment, or even to hide this from the parents. That's going on in California right now. So I want to be sure I understood the subcommittee's ranking member correctly. It sounded like she too opposes government replacing parents' judgment over the decision on transgender procedures for their children. Am I correct on that? Am I correct on that? I yield to the gentlelady to answer.
I'm sorry, I was...
It sounded like you oppose government replacing parents' judgment over the decision of transgender procedures on their children. Am I correct on that?
What I said was that parents have the ultimate right to make the decisions concerning appropriate medical care for their children.
I think we're agreeing. We can take that off the table. Both parties oppose the government, any government, making decisions over whether a child will be subjected to.
But you're arguing that people shouldn't have the right. Dude.
Transgender procedures contrary to the wishes of the parents. Do I understand that correctly?
I believe that's generally the legal standard.
Okay, that's great. Then
the dispute is over what is appropriate, apparently.
Both parties support a law that forbids performing these transgender procedures on a minor without the full and informed consent of the parents. Mr. Chairman, I believe we should advance such a bill right away. I think that would address the fears that I hear from a lot of parents that their desire to protect their child is at risk from various state governments like California who are trying to usurp that decision. We have complete agreement on that.
I think you're mischaracterizing the complete agreement.
Well, I thought we just arrived at that agreement until it comes down to actually doing it. And then you seem to have a change of heart. But Mr. Chairman, let's put that to the test. I see I'm out of time, but I think the sooner we move that, the better.
Very keen observation. The chair now recognizes Ms. Fallon, the gentlelady from Vermont.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to start by saying these issues.
Yeah, we appreciate the one black woman on this table one person on this whole table, and it's a black woman wearing a mask. Thank you, because people of color know what the fuck is up. Thank you, Jesus Christ. Anyway.
Cult for most Americans to talk about. And I want to bring us back to the basic dignity and humanity of all Americans. Full stop. Ms. Reynolds, I really appreciate you being here today. I, too, am a parent, and I know that I would do anything that I could to get my children the care that they need. And implied in what you've said is that journey was not always easy for you. And I'm wondering if we could bring it back to the experience of real parents, real Americans right now who are trying to wrestle with these issues. Just tell us a little bit more, if you could, about your experience of trying desperately to get your child the support that you felt like they needed and deserved, and you didn't always know what that was. So when my child came out as transgender, there was not sort of the hysteria that there is now about this. So there was not a lot of information. We didn't know anyone. We didn't know other parents. We didn't know other kids. So if you can imagine late nights on the internet trying to find any information, lots and lots of tears, lots and lots of discussions with my husband. What are we going to do? How are we going to support our child? And then we sort of put to the test the social transition. And then we spoke with experts, right? And we took our time and we learned and we grew. And as our child matured, that sort of changed things too. It was painful. I don't want to, I sort of don't want to focus on the negative of all of this, but it was extremely painful for us. It wasn't an easy choice. It wasn't anything that we took lightly. We took this extremely seriously. We were trying to get it right. Yeah. And so is it fair to say that you tried to put the needs of your child at the center of all the decisions that you were making, difficult decisions in the face of a lot of stigma, a lot of misunderstanding, and you said recently the hysteria around this. And does the added stigma make it more difficult for parents in this situation to have the courage to stand up for their children? Like, what is that like when you feel like you are trying desperately to do the right thing and you're hearing all of these voices that you are not being a good parent? It's absolutely heartbreaking, actually. I spent my entire career trying to help people, particularly children. That is what I do. And to sort of be looked at as a child abuser or an indoctrinator or something like that, it's extremely painful. It just adds a whole other layer to this. It feels very hateful and divisive.
I really appreciate you saying that, because I think there are a lot of parents across the country right now that are trying their level best to do right by their children. And this kind of heightened hysteria around this issue is making it very difficult for them to do that. So I wanted to bring this hearing back to basic humanity and dignity, because I feel like we have gone astray. That's the first thing I want to say. So thank you for being here. For Ms. Cole, I also want to thank you for being here. I'm very sorry you feel like you didn't get the care that you needed and deserved. Mr. Minter, you're welcome. Mr. Minter, if you could, talk to us about how gender-affirming care, what does that look like?
Yeah, we have one Democrat acknowledging the anti-trans side here. Like, thank you, Chloe, and I'm sorry that you didn't receive the care that you wanted. The care that was right for you, Like, if she's honest, and I don't think that Chloe Cole is honest, if she is honest, then, sympathy for that situation. But also fucking stop campaigning against people's rights. Thank you.
For young kids, what are we talking about when we talk about gender-affirming care for young children?
For young children, we're simply talking about parental love and support, not trying to change the child, recognizing that the child is transgender and allowing them to be who they are, and encouraging others, family members, to do the same. It's really just loving and supporting a child.
I really appreciate that. Again, let's bring it back to the basic humanity and dignity of all. The last thing I want to say is, in his opening statements, the chair said there's no such thing as gender assigned at birth. And I just want to be on the record here standing up for the 5.6 million Americans who are intersex. And actually, that's exactly what the experience that they had was. They were having their gender assigned at birth. And they are Americans too, and they are trying to navigate this. There are atypical chromosome patterns, gonads, and genitals that do not fit typical binary notions of male and female. That does not make them less American or less legitimate or less worthy of dignity and respect. I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. The chair now recognizes gentleman from Texas.
Thank you. Holy shit. Yeah, I wrote based in my notes. True. Like, thank you. Thank you for calling it out. Like, yeah, there is such a thing as being born intersex. And it's real and it matters. Like, those Americans are real. 5.6 million Americans, she said. Yeah, finally. Holy shit, finally.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, brave ladies, for being here today. I greatly appreciate it, and I admire your bravery in these times. Many of my colleagues on the left like to discuss gender-affirming care and claim that puberty blockers and hormone therapy and sex reassignment surgery are the only ways to treat gender dysphoria.
True.
Once a child expresses a feeling of gender dysphoria, instead of questioning the root cause of that feeling, that child will more likely than not be on a fast track to gender reassignment surgery, otherwise known as genital mutilation. But I want you to imagine
disgusting lies.
What would happen if we affirmed every thought that our children have? I'd like to show you
wow,
the food
cute.
pyramid. Now, I know what you're thinking. This is not the FDA's approved food pyramid, although many of you probably wish it was. This is a food pyramid according to my 4-year-old and my 2-year-old daughters. By the way, in the Hunt House, we don't do Ben & Jerry's. It's Bluebell only. If my children had their way, they would have ice cream for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and for every single meal.
Was that a political statement? He said no Ben and Jerry's in my house, only Bluebell. Is that because Ben and Jerry's are like liberal company, right? Yeah, they love using the word mutilation. Was that a political statement? Is that what the Republicans are down to? Like they're pledging their allegiance to the Republican platform by buying certain products and then advertising for them for free?
In between, the wisdom of children. But in the same country, we know that children are mature enough to make adult decisions that will impact the rest of their lives. That's why we have parents. Children cry for ice cream, but as parents, we have the wisdom to know that ice cream is not in their best interest.
Yeah, that's why the parents are part of the team of people helping the children make long-term decisions. You know that teenagers can get tattoos with parental permission, right? Are you okay? Are these people okay? God, COVID brain rot, man.
Particularly their long-term interest. I want to thank my parents, Willie and Diane Hunt. They had 3 children. All 3 of us went to West Point. All 3 of us served our country. All 3 of us earned multiple master's degrees from Ivy League schools. Do you know why? Because my parents did not give in to the thoughts of an adolescent Wesley Hunt. I am a United States congressman because my parents didn't listen to me when I was 8 years old. They raised us. They cared for us. They taught us the ways of being successful people. As an adult, you can do whatever you want with your body and with your own money. You're mature, you're fully grown, you can make adult decisions. I'm a combat veteran. I fought for the right for you as an adult to make your own decisions, but in my opinion, children are a different story. It is our obligation to protect them. When it comes to gender dysphoria in children, many in the American medical establishment have absolutely lost their minds.
Yeah, TLDR, I don't think children are people.
A child will tell their parent they have thoughts of gender dysphoria, and the parent may take that child to a doctor. But the doctor, instead of questioning the root cause of the dysphoria, will instead affirm the child's thoughts and proceed with gender-affirming care. But as many as my colleagues on the left want you to believe, there isn't widespread agreement on how to treat gender dysphoria.
No, it is.
That child mutilation is not the answer. In fact, Finland, Sweden, France, Norway, and the UK are reversing course and asking questions. In the UK,
no trans people want those changes.
Their only national gender clinic for children shut down last year by court order. What do their doctors know?
They're opening more youth. No, oh no. They closed Tavistock, but they're opening like at least 3 more youth-oriented care centers. Oh no.
That our doctors don't. I'm sorry we're here right now. I'm sorry, Miss Cole. We failed you. Miss Scanlon, my daughters are going to watch this because you have become their new hero, and I can assure you that my 4-year-old and my 2-year-old daughters will not change in front of biological men. This is ridiculous. I don't care what party you are a part of. If you think that we are all equal and the same biologically, you've literally lost your mind. And when my 2 daughters work hard in the sport, work hard in their craft to be the best that they can be amongst other women, they will compete against other women.
Yeah, imagine being Miriam Reynolds right now watching this asshole say that you enduring years of hardship to take care of your kid because you actually love them is like giving them ice cream all the time. One of the Democrats literally apologizes to her about this later. This guy is not considered to be breaking decorum, even though he is like insulting one of the witnesses right now. Joining the military-industrial complex does not mean you care about all rights. True. Yeah, because you would be, because part of what you did fight for the right for was the right for children to have access to medical care. My hero is a failed swimmer who was scared of trans women. Oh my God, true.
Oh, Victoria and Olivia and every other young lady in this country, that. If you think I'm wrong, I am not the problem. I can assure you. We have an opportunity in this country to get this right in 2024 so we can stop all of this foolishness. But I cannot thank you ladies enough for bringing this up. I apologize that we live in America when this is happening. But thank God for the American Spirit Fire, and thank God for brave women like you, because it's brave women like you.
Chloe is so nervous. Look at how much tip-tapping she's doing.
I'm going to turn the tide so that future women won't have to suffer in the same way that you have. God bless you.
Are we going to ask a question?
Thank you. The gentleman yields back.
Oh, he didn't even ask a question. He literally didn't ask any question. He only presented.
The chair next recognizes the gentleman from Tennessee, Mr. Cohen.
Thank you, Mr.
Everyone else has at least pretended to ask a question. Even the old white guy who interrupted Paula multiple times, at least he let her talk, even though he was just using her for sound bites.
First, I'd like to quote Judge Moody from Arkansas, federal judge. He said the diagnosis of gender dysphoria is made by a clinician who assesses whether a patient meets criteria based on a clinical interview, the clinician's observations of the patient, and the reports of the minor's parents. This is how diagnosis of other mental health conditions are generally made. Gender dysphoria is a serious condition that, if left untreated, can result in other psychological conditions, including depression, anxiety, self-harm, suicidal behavior, and impairment in functioning.
True.
So, these things need to be discussed and determined in a scientific manner and a logical manner, not emotion, not behavior and attitudes that appeal only to voters and to try to gain votes at the ballot box. This should be done responsibly. Transgender people have been around for a long time, and they have rights, and they need to be respected. I read Ms. Scanlon's testimony. I wasn't here to hear it, and I think Tim didn't deal with your situation like they could have and should have, in putting up some type of different barriers in the women's area of the locker room. But that's another issue. The thing should be dealt with in a different way. This is an easy way for people to try to get points. Pick on a minority group that is the most minority and least understood in our country.
So this Democrat guy, I think he just said that there is a legitimate concern to be said about the bathroom thing, but he is sticking to the science on on gender affirming care. Yeah, I think he's like, I'm not sure what my opinion is about the bathroom thing.
And it's gone on for centuries. 100 years ago it was African Americans. Later it was Hispanics. Then it was gay people. Now it's transgender people. Find a group that's not understood and is easy to use to gain political power. If it's bad for politics, it's bad for people, should use science. Parents have rights in raising their children. Athletes have rights. There's a connection. We need to figure out the right answer. And to get the right answer, we need to ask the Medical Association and the Psychiatric Association to choose the people that come before us to testify and give us their opinions on the right way to deal with this issue. Not each group picking people that are favorable to them to put out divergent issues, but people who are experts based on them.
Yeah, and that's another thing. Like, not only are there only 2 pro-trans people on this panel, but also they are not experts from the medical field. Like, we have a mother of a trans kid, and we have a trans man who is a legal director, but we don't actually have someone from, you know, like the American, what is it, the, I can't remember which one's actually real. I don't know, whatever. Like the American Medical Association. You know, we don't have someone from one of those associations who is representing what's going on here. You would think that they would do. So we have 2 people from the fucking Family Research Council. WPATH? Yeah, I mean, I guess, well, I just meant like, because people will accuse the WPATH of being an ideologically biased organization, but the American Medical Association is considered more unbiased, right? You know? Anyway. Yeah, I'm always the problem. Oh, sorry, it's always the problem who says I'm not the problem. True.
AMA, the American Psychiatric Association, and maybe another association similar, where they pick the witnesses and send them to us to talk about the issue and to suggest a response that would be both fair to the transgender parent, the transgender child, and society at large. The Republicans didn't want vaccines and face masks, and they argued that parental rights were sacrosanct then, and parents had a right to direct healthcare decisions for children. Well, a lot of people died. Tens and hundreds of thousands of people died because they didn't get vaccinated.
True.
Gender-affirming surgery,
Still are.
the government should make these sensitive decisions. Not necessarily the case. They also believe Americans only have access to healthcare if their healthcare decisions match Republican radical beliefs. Republicans fought against the Affordable Care Act. They fought and refused to expand Medicaid in states, leaving millions without healthcare coverage. 120,000 in my state, Tennessee, not getting healthcare coverage when the federal government would fund it.
True.
They passed countless abortion bans depriving women of safe reproductive healthcare. They spread misinformation and tried to undercut medical experts during the COVID pandemic, particularly in Florida. And now they're trying to limit gender-affirming care for transgender youth. By limiting access to healthcare, wedging the right-wing ideology into the exam room, and substituting their personal beliefs with the professional judgment of doctors, they are causing needless suffering. In the past 2 Congresses, I chaired this subcommittee. When the Republicans took control, they changed the name, which used to be the Constitution, Civil Rights, and Civil Liberties Subcommittee. They changed it to Constitution, I imagine, with a small c, and limited government. Civil rights and civil liberties were out the window. I was disappointed, not totally surprised, that civil rights and civil liberties were removed. What I didn't understand is, however, this has anything to do with limited government.
Like, there's no panel on civil rights and civil liberties now. No worries, Shuffle. Feel free to get the hell out of here if you feel the need to. There's only 3 more likes until we get to 100, though, so if y'all can hit the like button, that would be amazing. They accuse all of the orgs that endorse gender-affirming care of being ideologically bent. Yeah, there's no reasoning with these people, truly.
This does not have to do with limited government. There's nothing limited about asserting the preferences and beliefs of federal legislators into individual healthcare decisions about young people.
True.
It's intrusive and it's dangerous. I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from South Carolina, but first, seek unanimous consent to allow the gentleman from Florida, member of the full committee, to participate and have the time waited for him for the subcommittee.
Mr. Chairman, I object. I withdraw the objection.
Thank you. Thank you. And the chair recognizes the gentleman from South Carolina, Mr. Pratt.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to yield my 5 minutes to the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Matt Gates. Thank the gentleman for yielding. Ms. Scanlon, we just heard my Democrat colleague, Mr. Cohen, say that your circumstance could have been fully resolved if we'd just had some barriers.
Oh, yeah, so pedo Matt Gates. Okay, good. This is the person that we're going to listen to about gender-affirming care.
Showers. Do you think that that's a sufficient way to resolve what we're dealing with here?
I think by Representative Cohen admitting that we need barriers acknowledges there are biological differences between men and women. And by acknowledging that we need to have private spaces that are separate from each other, why can't we just use the locker rooms that we've always used, men's and the women's? If you're acknowledging that we need protection and privacy from these men.
Because transgender women have a 1/3 lifetime rate of sexual assault. So you want to condemn another woman to a potential sexual assault situation by putting her in a situation where she is surrounded by actual men, actual biological males.
And you're acknowledging that the locker rooms we've always used are the correct ones.
My next question is for Shannon Minter. Are you familiar with the changes in law recently in Washington State regarding transgender youth?
Oh, we have one acknowledgement of the trans man.
Yes.
And as I understand it, it used to be the case in Washington State that if a youth showed up at an emergency shelter, there was a legal requirement to notify the parent within 72 hours in the absence of some abuse or neglect. Is that your understanding of what the law was then?
I believe that is correct.
And then the law changed, where now in Washington State, if someone shows up to one of these shelters who's a minor and says that their parents don't agree with them changing their gender, that the shelter no longer has to notify the parents within 72 hours and can instead notify a government authority. Do I have that right?
The parents will be notified. There's no question about that. This simply allows for a delay in order to allow them to investigate to make sure this child is going to be safe. There's no question that the parents will be notified.
How long should parents have to wait, not knowing where their child is, while a government process is playing out to make a gender determination?
There's no reason to treat these situations with transgender young people who may be in danger or at risk of abuse at home any differently than we would treat any other child. We have reasonable basis to worry about that and to investigate that.
But it does
a short delay to protect the safety of young people is always warranted.
How long is the delay? How long do you want a parent not knowing where their kid is because the kid says they want to change their gender? Just tell me how long a delay you think is appropriate.
I want authorities to treat these kids with the same care they treat all other children. But it will be a short delay, and the parents
Hold on,
will
no,
be notified.
because you won't tell us how long a delay. So if you're watching this, just imagine you're that parent and you don't know where your child is. And the law now says there's a 72-hour period where the shelter has.
He's talking over Minter and like I mean, frankly, he's being misogynistic if we're being honest. Like, he knows that this dude is trans and he's interrupting and speaking over him and not allowing him to respond, because the answer is the same amount of time as any other situation where abuse has been alleged. If any youth comes into one of these places, these shelters, and says that there's alleged abuse, yeah, we're talking about abused kids shelters who also take in trans kids. So like, anytime there's a question of abuse, they're going to take the appropriate time to make sure that there isn't abuse before they send the kid back to their parents or let the parents know where they are, you know? Yeah, how long should I go without being able to possibly harm my queer kid? Yeah, but what if I want to harm them and I have the right to do that?
Has to notify you in that 72-hour period for any child of any gender or any circumstance is a period to investigate whether there's abuse in the home. But beyond that, beyond 72 hours, you got to tell the parent. And so it's really important to understand here what the proponents of radical gender ideology want. They want to stand between a parent and a child on these important decisions. And I don't think it's abuse if a parent says, I'm not going to get my child gender blockers. And it's odd to hear you advocate for the law.
It is abuse, thank you. Go fuck yourself, fucking pedophile.
Because just moments ago, in testimony, you said, and I wrote it down, parents have a fundamental right to make healthcare decisions regarding their children. But if in Washington state today, the parent makes the decision that they're not going to provide that gender-affirming care, what it does is it unlocks for the government a window of time to keep the child away from the parent and to not tell the parent where the kid is. Oh, please, get over yourself.
But that doesn't mean that they're getting any care. I wonder what that person said in the background. I could not discern. Someone like hollered in the background. You had gender blockers. Me. That's my my band name, Gender Blockers. That's me. No one is allowed to have a gender. You try to have a gender, I block you. You try to buy a Barbie, I block you. You try to buy nail polish, I block you. No gender. Blocked. Nuh-uh. Yeah, imagine you're that parent and you will never be able to abuse your child again, and it's terrifying. Yeah, no gender, only spite. Oh my God.
What's terrible is when you have this incongruent desire of the government to restrain the ability of parents to parent. And I can only imagine.
I think it was pervert that they yelled. Hard to tell though. Yeah, it's hard to say.
The terror that a parent must go through not knowing where their child is. So I think that's really challenging. We've also seen in the state of Alaska, Title IX, which was established for girls' sports, to be used as a justification to socially transition a child against their wishes. Ms. Scanlon, as a beneficiary of Title IX, as a female athlete, do you think Title IX should be used in that way?
Absolutely not. Swimming did a lot of really good things for my life after I'm a sexual assault survivor.
Why does she need to comment on Title IX? She's a legal expert now?
And swimming was one of the only things that I had to keep me going when I was struggling with that. And to think about young girls that are not going to be given those same opportunities because Title IX is being reworked and rewritten for these new people that have different definitions of what a woman is.
Yeah, I'm against transitioning children against the will of their parents, and I'm against transitioning Title IX away from an asset for women's sports to this strange social justice cause that is deeply
pedophile.
misguided. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Mr. Chairman, I seek unanimous consent to introduce into the record an article entitled, "No, Washington did not just pass a law allowing the state to kidnap and transgenderify children."
Without objection.
Thank you.
The chair now recognizes the gentlelady from Texas, Ms. Escobar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before I begin my questioning, I have to say this has been so deeply disturbing on a number of levels. And what we have seen today is what we've been seeing this entire Congress, which is an effort by my Republican colleagues and indeed some of the more extreme voices in the Republican Party to keep Americans on a treadmill of rage. Whatever the latest issue is that they want people to be angry about, they do their best to keep Americans on a treadmill of rage. And they get their Fox or Newsmax or whatever right-wing media outlet of the moment is, they get their viewers, they get a clip from this hearing that gets displayed, it gets put on Twitter, and they make money. That's what all of this is all about, unfortunately. I'd like unanimous consent to enter into the record a couple of articles. The first is Gender-Affirming Surgeon Speaks at Jacobs School event, dated June 9th, 2023.
Objection.
And that article, we saw a clip earlier of Dr. Blair Peters. And had Dr. Peters actually been here, he could have helped dispel some myths. In fact, in the article, you'll find Dr. Peters saying very explicitly, transgender kids do not get surgery, Dr. Peters said, directly refuting a key talking point for those trafficking in anti-trans rhetoric. The other article I'd like unanimous consent, Mr. Chairman, to enter into the record is an article entitled, "I Don't Want to Live in This State of Terror Anymore. Some families with trans children are leaving Texas." If I could have unanimous consent to enter that into the record.
Without objection.
Thank you. Mr. Minter and Ms. Reynolds, thank you for being here to dispel some of these myths and to fight back against this effort to keep Americans on this treadmill of anger and rage. I'd also, Ms. Reynolds, I want to apologize to you. One of my Republican colleagues made some really demeaning and belittling comments meant to humiliate and minimize the parents of trans children by comparing the very difficult, painful journey and conversation with children about transitioning to allowing kids to eat ice cream all day, every day. So I want to apologize on behalf of what happened.
She is upset. Like, I'm like tearing up. I'm upset, like looking at her because she is clearly like upset. Like, as a trans mom, like, as a mom of a trans kid, like, man, like, that's, the disrespect.
I want to congratulate you for your courage to speak on behalf of your child and other children. I'd like to ask you, Ms. Reynolds, I entered into the record this article about Texas, and Texas has been a very hostile state to vulnerable populations. Can you tell me, and I've listened very carefully to your journey, but can you tell us what happens when the government marshals all of its energy and resources to harm families like yours?
It's absolutely terrorizing, is what it does. It's very, it creates another level of stress, and I mean, I really can't even understate that, overstate that. It's terrorizing. It really is. It's extremely stressful. It's extremely distracting. It produces all kinds of fear. I would have left Texas already if that was something that was financially feasible for my family, and it's not. My career is in Texas. My children are established there. They have their friends. They have their schools. They're there. We're here. And but because of this, I would have been, a political refugee to another state if I could afford to do that. So we have no choice but to try to.
She's like, I would be a political refugee, but I can't afford to leave. Like, honestly, sell everything you own.
At least tell our story and see if anybody can hear sort of something a little more rational, something a little more like what families like mine are experiencing.
Thank you so much, Ms. Reynolds. And I would be remiss if I didn't say, if Congress really wanted to protect children, my colleagues on the other side of the aisle would have joined with us in passing robust, comprehensive gun violence prevention legislation that would truly protect children. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Yields back, and the chair recognizes the gentleman from California, Ms. Kyle. I yield back to the chair. Thank you for yielding the time. Dr. Bounds, can you define what gender dysmorphia is?
Dysmorphia or dysphoria?
Well, is there two different terms?
Yes, so gender dysphoria is a diagnosis in the DSM, which is what we're talking about.
Yes. So is it increasing among our children now, this gender dysphoria?
Yes, the diagnosis has increased. I believe even from 2021 to current, there was like a 40% increase.
Insert left-handedness chart. Oh, we're one like away from 100.
The other thing is that we've also had a proliferation of gender clinics. So 10 years ago, there was just maybe a few, and now all of a sudden, there are tons of gender clinics with a really steep curve.
Imagine not having to drive 3 hours to get trans-related care. Hey, did you know that when I first started testosterone, I had to drive 3 hours to get the care that I needed? Did you know that? I drove 3 hours to get my prescription and to get my first shot. And that meant that I wasn't able to get regular care because I wasn't always able to drive 3 hours, so my care was mostly handled remotely. Like, I didn't have any blood tests done in those first couple of years because I just kept taking my prescription and I couldn't afford to go back to get my blood levels checked and everything. And it wasn't until years later that there was a place nearby where I could get that care. I drove 3 hours there, and I drove 3 hours back. So imagine, what a terrible world where you don't have to travel practically across state lines to get access to medical care. Wow.
Surgical markets expected to increase.
So do you think social media has any role in this increase in
of course.
dysphoria?
Absolutely. We know that kids are being influenced. I have a list of, there are 40,000 subscribers to a detransitioning site, and I have a list of people who are willing to testify, not to mention
the 40,000 members of the detrans subreddit, which is comprised largely of TERFs. Is that what you're referring to?
Who are silent. But I'm sorry, what was the question again?
Well, just about the role of social media and
yes.
the influences there.
So social media, especially with this age cohort, has a very important role. The unfortunate thing, and which is actually the compassionate thing, would be if we were to begin to research why is there such an increase in diagnoses of gender dysphoria, and not just our pat answer of more people feel comfortable coming out. Why has the demographic flipped from mostly biological males experiencing gender dysphoria to biological females? So we don't have answers to those questions, and yet we're plowing ahead with this kind of.
I think it actually is fairly even, and I think that it actually always has been fairly even. The thing was that transgender men have historically had a little bit easier of a time becoming stealth. So, and because they can stealth, they don't have to declare that they're trans, and so they just won't. Like a lot of trans men used to go completely stealth. A lot of trans women used to go completely stealth if they could. It's always been even. We just have different focuses.
These procedures anyway.
Well, the evidence seems to show that there's sort of a rush to force gender transition or sex change procedures on children. Are we imagining that, or do you think that's actually happening?
No, I don't think we're imagining that. I wish that some of the experiences that we've heard reported today were accurate for the population at whole, but that's not what we're seeing. You could go on Planned Parenthood's website and see that if you want testosterone or estrogen prescription, you can go there and get it in an hour. You don't have to go through a rigorous assessment. I think if we had those.
Again, yes, this is what trans people want. Every trans person wants fewer barriers. Yeah, what we need is more cisgender people who have no idea what it's like to be trans, telling trans people whether or not they're really trans. Yeah, sure. If the question was, should we have more trans people making this decision, then yeah, sure, I would be yeah, let's do that. And yeah, and getting a prescription in an hour is an adult thing. Yeah, that's exactly, Mama. You can't get hormones in an hour if you're 16. It's only for 18-year-olds, the informed consent thing. You have to have parental permission if you're a kid. even if it was uneven, that might have something to do with how society has historically treated people who are AFAB as not having agency too. I mean, and it's possible that, like, in previous generations, you know, there is a flexibility. I would say there's a flexibility for people assigned female where you're allowed to dress like a boy without being like, you're not allowed to be a woman anymore. Whereas when you are assigned male and you start, like, acting feminine or dressing feminine, you lose access to maleness. You lose access to manhood immediately. So for transgender women, you know, there is less of an opportunity to be gender nonconforming, or for trans femme people, there's less opportunity to be just gender nonconforming without basically just, like, being pushed to identify as trans. Whereas, like, yeah, and like, it's also that, like, people who are assigned female who express that they are male are not taken very seriously because of the misogyny that is still being misapplied to them. Like, so even if they have tried to present themselves as male, people are just like, oh, that's cute or whatever, whereas they perceive trans women as a threat, you know? Yeah. There was a point in time where online trans culture was dominated by trans women because the spaces trans culture were sectioned off to tended to be more frequented by AMAB people. That's my, well, yeah, I don't even know if online trans culture was dominated by trans women, or if we were just in different places. Trans men were on LiveJournal back in the day, you know? And I don't think that there was, like, a large culture of trans women on LiveJournal. That's where I found all my resources, though. There's tomboys, but not Tanya girls. True.
Markers in place, then you'd see kids not running towards this kind of transition, because I think the number is around 78% come to a clinical setting with at least 3 other, or at least some kind of diagnosis other than gender dysphoria.
So yeah, then and also, of course, the idea, once again, that if you have any comorbidities, you're not allowed to transition, which is harmful to, like, oh, if a trans man has an eating disorder, because it's the only way that he can control having curves on his body, and you deny him care, like, because you want to resolve the ED, well then, let's say you resolve the ED, but it makes him curvy again, and then the dysphoria spikes, and then it's a cycle where he's like, I don't want to look like a female, so I'm gonna restrict my eating again. And, like, yeah, it's a self-fulfilling thing. Jesus.
Obvious fact that there are some industries that stand to benefit financially from all these procedures and all this experimentation. Are you aware of European nations putting a pause on gender transition procedures for minors?
Yes. I mean, and I think that's the issue that we're asking for. This is the compassionate issue. Let's review the literature. Yeah. Let's review what does the science actually say, and not just from people who are supporters. Either way.
Let's keep asking questions for 20 years after the science has been settled.
Science say. And then what we're seeing is countries like the UK that shut down the Tavistock clinic. You're seeing other countries like Finland, Norway, etc. that once they actually look at the science that's used.
They shut down Tavistock and they're opening 3 other clinics
to support these procedures. They back away from it because the evidence is actually very weak.
And there's no reliable studies on long-term effects. We don't know.
The longest one we have is Sweden, because it goes 10 years. And the reality is that a lot of people don't experience regret until like 5 to 7 years after they've gone through these procedures.
I'll have more time for questions for the panel. I know Ms. Cole's about to hit that, but I'm coming back to you, so I'll have more time. But I just want to note that on May 13th of 2021, a subcommittee member here on Judiciary, our colleague Ms. Sheila Jackson-Lee, walked in the room. I'm going to quote you because you said, I think it's on the screen there, in essence, the brain doesn't fully mature until at least 25 years old. Does that tell us about high school students, middle schoolers, and yes, young people who make rash or irreverent or spontaneous decisions? Should that be their life? Now, admittedly, she was saying this in the context of a criminal subcommittee hearing, but I think that is a truism. I think she stated an obvious fact that everybody should acknowledge.
So we are going to restrict the rights of adults up to age 25.
Unfortunately, I'm out of time. I'll have some more in a bit. The chair now recognizes Ms. Jackson-Lee. How about that introduction?
Mr. Johnson, thank you for giving me that gift. You're absolutely right. That hearing, if I might quote it specifically, as the chair of the committee, it was made during a committee hearing entitled The Juvenile Justice Pipeline and the Road Back to Integration. The idea, Ms. Reynolds and Mr. Minter, was to save lives from young people being incarcerated for life. And it was the individual young person making rash actions that would draw themselves into criminal life or criminal acts, should that be the rest of their life. So let me not step away from the idea that we want to save lives in many instances. Let me get to the point of this hearing, since that was not relevant to this hearing and it was on a completely different topic. But let me get to this point. Let me apologize for a hearing that frightens me. I have dealt with this issue for decades. And I dealt with a young man named David Ritchie, who was a gay young man, a young man, who in the place he lived, Texas, his life was not affirmed. He lived in a skin of concern and fear. And ultimately, he was sodomized. And we introduced legislation of the David Ritchie anti-hate legislation. Because as a gay young man who lived life differently, he was not affirmed. Ultimately, even though got past this case, he ultimately committed suicide. So let me, as I begin my questioning, tell you how fearful I am that the intervention of this committee on issues of private healthcare determination frighteningly labeled the trans community in a way that someone is being intimidated in fear and concern for their life, or their personal thinking is that they're not worthy, they're not entitled to good healthcare, and that their life is not worth it. I insist on pronouncing today, your life is worth it. Your son's life is worth it. Daughter's life is worth it. However they are transitioning and as they live their life. And I plead and beg for those who might be listening, know that we do not believe that this is a question for this committee. It is a question for healthcare, for your parent or loved one or guardian, and as well, your personal determination. I will not pretend to be a scriptured person. I am not ordained. I'm not in any leading religious organization as a religious leader, but I have spoken to persons who lead, and they've given me no evidence that this issue speaks to anyone's religion. Again, I don't pretend to know every aspect of everyone's faith, and in this country, you practice as you desire. But I will not sit here and allow the trans community to be abused, and in essence, to be rejected. And for someone somewhere, let me say, your life is worthwhile. Mr. Mentor, let me provide you with a question very quickly. My time is short. The Due Process Clause of the 14th Amendment forbids states to deprive any person of life, liberty, or property. The Supreme Court has stated this clause includes a substantive component that provides heightened protection against government interference. What does this mean to the interest? The court stated the interest of parents in the care and custody of control of their children is important. Please give what this means to you as you lead out in this community. Ms. Reynolds, please let us know what this meant to you for your son, for his...
That was pretty quick, but she's invoking the 14th Amendment. The reason I was unable to recognize my own transness is exactly because my agency as an assigned female person was denied and downplayed. Yeah, thank you for joining the website, DocsCube, and thank you for that contribution. Like, yeah, like the idea that as a person assigned female that your gender dysphoria is really just internalized misogyny or something like that, you know, like that. It is difficult. It makes it harder, for sure. Yeah, if you can't stay alive out of love for yourself, stay alive out of spite for those who want you dead. Truly.
Is coming together and how you needed the support of your community, your surrounding, and how important this is for trans. Let me go to Mr. Mentor, please. And I'd ask the chairman for his indulgence, so I had to respond to his commentary. Yes, Ms. Mentor.
Thank you so much for your statement of support for this community. Kids need to hear that. Yes, these state bans are an unthinkable intrusion on the traditional, deeply rooted authority of parents to make medical decisions for their own children. And we're talking about obtaining established care. So parents who know there's an effective treatment, they see their child suffering, to have the government come in and say, no, you cannot obtain this health care for your children is a shocking violation of parents' rights.
Psychologically, Ms. Reynolds, you can just bring it home to us what it really means and who somebody that's not in this room might be seeing what's going on here.
I just want to highlight how incredibly difficult all of this was. This is, again, nothing that we arrived on easily. There was nothing impulsive about any of this decision. It was made collaboratively with a team of trained professionals. There was a ridiculous amount of assessment that happened prior to that. This is not just some kind of fly-by-night. My kid said this one day, and then this whole thing launched. That is not how this went down. It's very, very, very careful.
Are others impacted by listening to this quickly? Can you just say what impact, hearing that they are not affirmed?
It's devastating.
Young ladies, that's that.
I yield back. Thank you.
Thank you. And the chair yields next gentleman, Texas, Mr. Roy. Thank you, Chair. I thank the witnesses for being here. Ms. Scanlon, is Leah Thomas a man or a woman?
Leah Thomas is biologically male.
Did the University of Pennsylvania attempt to silence or censor you or any of your teammates when the news broke about a member of the team swim team would be joining your female swim team?
We'd already known at this point that Thomas would be joining our team, and the university advised us to seek counseling if we objected.
Did they try to silence you all in terms of voicing your opinions?
Yes, in fact, I wrote an opinion piece for a school newspaper that was quickly retracted because it was too offensive to be written and published.
Offensive that you were concerned about a biological male.
So again, you are not owed a platform. Yeah, we're so censored in this Congress hearing. Yeah, I have a national platform right now. I'm being so censored.
Competing against you and undressing in a locker room with you and others, that would be, quote, offensive, end quote.
Yes.
What steps did the University of Pennsylvania take to platform Leah Thomas over you and your female teammates?
The University of Pennsylvania nominated Leah Thomas for NCAA Women of the Year. In fact, I found this to be very offensive because there are plenty of other female athletes at the University of Pennsylvania that are very strong and very worthy of that nomination.
Are you familiar with the International Swimming Federation?
Yes.
My fifis. Oh.
You consider it to be some bastion of right-wing conspiracy or somehow a conservative right-wing organization?
No.
Did the International Swimming Federation ban Leah Thomas from competing at the 2024 Paris Olympics?
Yes, the governing body of swimming put in laws to say that individuals that have gone through male puberty are not permitted to compete in women's competitions.
So,
based on zero evidence, BT Dubs.
A question for you, Ms. Cole, and first of all, thank you for being here. I've heard some of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle use words like, this frightens me, this hearing. They're frightened by us having a hearing in which you are able to speak to the world about what you have gone through. And I've heard colleagues on the other side of the aisle say, life is worth it, in the context of pushing a particular worldview and saying life is worth it. I would just ask to say that I just want to make sure that you know, like from our standpoint, that your life is worth it. And that the people that have gone through this, that your lives are worth it. And I wondered if you'd like to comment on the worth of your life and the social pressures and the pressure placed on you to pursue a path that you now believe was not the correct path.
I think we're all on the same page here, that everybody's life and right happiness is worthy. And that's what we're all fighting for, even if we don't necessarily agree on what that means. And if I may ask, would I be able to address another witness?
Through the chair, you may. So you may speak to me and reference any other testimony you wish to.
Okay. Well, Mrs. Reynolds.
You can direct it to me and say that
oh my gosh.
Talk about you want to respond to, and go ahead.
She doesn't understand the decorum.
I understood that Mrs. Reynolds is scared for her child. And I just want to set the record straight that I don't hate her. I don't think anybody in this room hates her. In fact, I see my own mother and my own father in her, and that she really loves her child, and she's doing the best with what she's been given. And unfortunately, it's not much. And for that, I'm sorry. I mean, I think every parent deserves the utmost grace and guidance with how to help their child. That being said, I don't wish for her child to have the same result as I did. I don't wish for anybody to regret transition or detransition because it's incredibly difficult. It comes with its own difficulties, and it's not easy. And I hope that her child gets to have a happy and fulfilling adulthood, however that may look like.
That was all fake crying, by the way. Yeah, from my notes, Chloe Cole does the fakest crocodile tears you've ever seen in your entire goddamn life. Like, nothing about... Like, Ms. Reynolds earlier got choked up, and it almost made me choke up. And Chloe was not really upset right then. Like, that was all fake. Like, I don't think that any of that was real. Biggest crocodile tears I've ever seen.
Well, thank you for that, Ms. Cole. I think it was heartfelt, and I know that a number of us share your view. One last question as my time is winding down. Do you believe that the American healthcare system failed you?
On every single level.
Thank
My
you.
doctors and systemically.
Thank you for being here. I yield back. Thank you. The gentleman yields back.
Mr. Chair, I ask unanimous consent to enter into the record 2 articles. First, social contagion isn't causing more youth to be transgender. That's NBC News, August 2nd, 2022. And study finds no evidence of social contagion among transgender youth, August 3rd, 2022, American Academy of Pediatrics.
No objection? Another? Yes.
Cool.
Oh, sorry. I was hoping to come again.
My 5-year-old niece can fake cry more convincingly.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Human Rights Watch attacks on gender-affirming care by state, but I just want to show this map and just indicate how personal I think these decisions are. And Ms. Cole has indicated how personal it is. And you have too, Ms. Reynolds. Thank you. Unanimous consent. Also, a hole in our hearts, family, friends, mourn murder victim China Gibson. Another unanimous consent. China Gibson identified the 5th transgender woman killed in 2017. This is related, and I'm introducing the China Gibson Stop Murdering Black Trans today, and Planned Parenthood, Texas affiliates, and PPFA move for decision in Baseless Medicaid False Claims Act, particularly attacked because of their work in trans-affirming healthcare. As unanimous consent for those to be placed into the record.
Without objection, the chair.
She cited some articles about violence against trans people and trans-supportive individuals.
Now recognizes the ranking member, Ms. Scanlon, for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you, and thank you to our witnesses. We appreciate you being here to share your experiences and help everybody understand both the very personal stories that are implicated in this issue, as well as some of the political agendas that are being pushed. It is remarkable that our majority colleagues were not able to find any medical professionals to back their claims in today's hearing, other than an edited video of someone who actually has refuted their conclusions. And much of what we've heard today really is playing to and from some of the furthest extremes of right-wing ideology and fear-mongering. Mr. Minter, our colleagues and witnesses have expressed concern about the participation of transgender students on athletic teams aligning with their gender identities, even while conceding several times now that to the extent this is a concern in competitive athletics, the athletic governing bodies are addressing this issue for competitive athletes. Can you further comment?
Yeah, this transgender students, transgender girls and women have been playing on sports teams for a long time now. Only recently has this become weaponized as a political issue. We, sports associations, high school athletic associations, governing sports bodies, local school districts have long been able to deal with this issue as they should by looking at relevant factors like age, sport, level of competition, individual circumstances. This is a classic solution in search of a problem. The real problem, if there is one, is the one Ms. Reynolds identified, which is still so difficult for transgender kids to participate at all or to receive any encouragement and support.
Right, and that has been one of the primary concerns that we've been hearing from families as they have kids who just want to be kids and participate in sports, and because of the weaponization of this issue, it's become a problem. So thank you for that. We've also heard conservative lawmakers and activists argue that bans on gender-affirming care are necessary to protect minors, with many labeling gender-affirming treatments experimental, and as we've seen here today repeatedly, deliberately confusing gender-affirming care with gender transition surgery. Can you speak to that issue?
Again, surgery is an adult treatment. That is not what we're talking about with children and youth. And there have been now 6 court cases, including 2 complete full trials, where these states have had the opportunity to substantiate the claim that this treatment is experimental. They have no evidence of that. And again, courts across a wide variety of judges have concluded that this is not experimental care. It is well established. It's well founded. There's extensive clinical research showing the benefits. And this is just what ordinarily happens in our healthcare system, which is parents with their children and their healthcare providers making reasonable medical decisions to help their own children.
Thank you. If you had about 30 seconds to address any additional concerns, what would you say?
The UK still provides healthcare to transgender young people. They shut down the one clinic that used to provide all the care in order to open up multiple regional clinics to serve more children. The Swedish study's been referred to here a number of times today. It's so important. That study lends 0 credence to the notion that these treatments are not effective. And the author of that study has repeatedly expressed great distress at the way her study has been misrepresented. She strongly opposes bans on healthcare for transgender youth.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Minter. Oh my God. Just addressing those things. Very necessary.
We have heard a lot of misinformation, probably firmly held personal beliefs, but that may be at odds with the facts. So I want to correct some of that for the record, Mr. Chairman. I would seek unanimous consent to enter the following items into the record. A letter from leading medical organizations to Congress opposing efforts to ban gender-affirming care.
No objection.
A letter from the Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights in support of laws and policies that promote transgender, non-binary, and intersex people from discrimination.
No objection.
An opinion by the U.S. District Court in Arkansas, which was later affirmed by the 8th Circuit Court, which has a very complete assessment of the legal and factual basis for this discussion. It found a statewide ban on gender-affirming care to be in violation of the 14th Amendment.
No objection.
A human rights campaign FAQ on gender-affirming care for anyone who has questions about what's actually going on.
No objection.
A policy paper from Women's Sports Foundation entitled Participation of Transgender Athletes in Women's Sports. I'm almost done.
Without objection.
And a New York Times article entitled How a Campaign Against Transgender Rights Mobilized Conservatives.
No objection.
Thank you. I yield back.
Thank you. Gentlelady yields back. Chair recognizes the chairman of the full committee, Mr. Jordan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Scanlon, the ranking member just said...
We're almost done here. We're very close to being done.
This is simply about letting kids compete and that the sports governing bodies are addressing this. So I would just ask you 2 questions. Is Leah Thomas a kid?
No.
And is the NCAA appropriately and in the right way, in your judgment, addressing the situation?
They did not during our season. They said that Olympians deserve protections, but collegiate level athletes, grassroots level athletes, middle schoolers, high schoolers did not deserve those same protections.
So in your judgment, the chairman calling this hearing is not a waste of time, as the ranking member said. We're trying to get to the bottom of the real concern that's impacting all kinds of young ladies who participate in collegiate athletics.
Yes, and I would like to say that while there's been a lot of notions that this is such a minority group of people, this one transgender athlete, Leah Thomas, affected hundreds of girls. There were hundreds of girls at the NCAA championship that were in tears over the situation, whether it be getting bumped out of their spots in competition, failing to qualify for the meet, or having to change in the locker room next to a 6'4" biological male. This is not a minority group that is being affected by this.
Well, thank our witnesses for being here today. Thank the chairman for his work, and I yield to the chairman.
Thank you. Thank you for yielding.
I'm a baby.
Quick question for Mr. Minter. You yourself transitioned at age 35 and not as a child, correct?
That is correct. I wish I'd been able to do so earlier.
All right, Ms. Cole, I want to thank you again for being here today and for sharing your power.
I like that he got that in. He's like, yes, I did transition as an adult, and I wish I had been able to do it earlier.
testimony, especially on your 19th birthday, and that has been very helpful to us.
Okay, so she's 19.
I want to acknowledge what you said earlier, tearfully. It was appropriate. Everyone here, as you said, our hearts go out to everybody. The families, everybody affected. We're trying to strike the right balance, and we do believe Congress has a role here. And I appreciate your testimony for providing evidence of that. And I wanted to ask you first about your parents' involvement in your transition.
We're trying to strike the right balance by having 4 anti-trans people and 2 pro-trans people as witness.
Process, and then ask you about some of the hormone treatments you underwent, because I think all that's important. First, were you or your parents informed of the long-term effects of the procedures and hormones that you were subjected to?
We had consent forms with a list of some of the side effects, and we did do consultations where we did speak about some of them, but it was in very vague terms. And I mean, as a child, it was a lot for me to process, because I mean, I was perfectly healthy, and children tend to think that they're invincible, that nothing can get them. And with all these things being listed, it was hard to know which of these I would experience. And most of the side effects that I experienced, most of the ones I'm experiencing today, actually, were not even listed on these forms, so I had no idea. And children just don't know what permanence is, because they've only been in the world for so many years.
Because they are not side effects of hormone care.
It's an important legal principle that we have informed consent, fully informed consent for life-altering medical procedures. And are you then suggesting that it was not really full informed consent?
I mean, no matter how much information they would have given me, as a child, I just would not have been able to consent to this. And my parents were required to sign off on these, but it was under duress. I don't think there was really consent. It was coercion.
It was under duress and coercion. Doesn't describe any actual duress or coercion. I guess like the idea that trans kids could be suicidal is considered duress now.
They were given the false dichotomy of either child transitions or she dies. But transition almost killed me.
And the evidence suggests that that is a common practice, regardless of what's been said here today. And there's some other things that are very disturbing. One aspect...
I mean, it is objectively true that kids who don't have access to transition-related care and social support are at higher risk of suicide. It's literally true.
The current child movement about, this sex change movement, it's particularly pernicious is the so-called off-label medications. One that's well known as leuprolide acetate, or it's commonly known as Lupron, to chemically alter boys and girls. Not by surgery, but chemically. It's the same thing. There's a long list of pharmaceutical drugs that medical personnel...
Not by surgery, but chemically, it's the same thing. He just slips that in there.
Across the country are using to, for example, shut off the testosterone production in young boys and make them more feminine looking, or to shut off the estrogen production in young girls and make them more masculine looking. So I'm going to say for the record, post-hearing we have 5 days, I'll enter some of the articles that detail a list of these chemical drugs being used on children for purposes that are not approved by the FDA. But Ms. Cole, was one of those puberty blockers that you were prescribed Lupron?
Yes, I was put on Lupron.
And what was the purpose of that in your hormone treatment?
Just to stop the natural production of my hormones to make way for the exogenous testosterone.
Does it concern you as it does us that some pharmaceuticals are being used to chemically mutilate some children today that were never explicitly approved for that?
Chemically mutilate. This off-label shit is so disingenuous. Like, so many medications are prescribed off-label. It's not a big deal. Like, isn't Viagra being a boner thing? That's an off-label. Like, I'm pretty sure that Viagra's primary purpose is as a cardiovascular medication, right? Like, if you get prescribed Viagra for your boner, that's off-label. If you get prescribed Prazosin for nightmares, that's off-label because it's a blood pressure medication. Like, people do this all the time. Chemically, like it's the Joker acid, true. We're almost done.
Purpose by the FDA?
Incredibly so.
And to my knowledge, there's currently no effort underway by the FDA to explicitly approve these pharmaceuticals for these purposes.
And they shouldn't.
They should. The time expired for the time that was yielded to me, and I thank the chairman, and I recognize myself for my 5 minutes finally, so I'll keep going here. The last time I checked, it was still illegal under federal law to use FDA-approved pharmaceuticals for an unapproved or off-label use, and yet we're seeing that very commonly in this field. Ms. Cole, do you find it concerning that
Is it illegal? Because it happens all the time.
Medications that were used on you or on countless other children across the country for a reason contrary to the original purpose they were approved for?
Oh, and also Lupron is confirmed for precocious puberty, so it is like, just like, if we're trying to pause puberty for a few years, Lupron is a medication that is for that. So if you are going to deny the medicine to trans kids for the same purpose of pausing puberty, that is a 14th Amendment violation. Yeah, Spiro is a blood pressure med.
Or, you said it's something that concerns you, disturbs you, shouldn't be allowed, right?
Very much so.
Ms. Mailman, let me go to you. There's been a lot of talk here in recent few minutes about legal precedents, et cetera. I saw you sort of biting your lip as some of that was presented. I'll give you a moment here to refute any of that or respond to it if you will.
Right, well, we've heard a lot about the parents' rights to put drugs into their kids, which the Sixth Circuit has just very recently said that there is no Supreme Court case that extends this idea of parental rights to a general right to receive new or experimental drug treatments. And in general, this idea of substantive due process.
Oh, yeah, actually, like, young people who have cancer receive experimental treatments all the time, do they not? Like, young people with complex disorders are allowed, with parental consent, to enter into experimental drug trials. Like, there's no fucking way that's not true. There's no way. Yeah, damn, this hormone suppressor is also assigned to treat hormone-aggravated cancers. Crazy! Of course, yeah, associating Lupron with cancer. Yeah, like, oh, we're giving cancer drugs to kids. Yeah.
Would strip people, would strip parents, would strip voters, would strip doctors of a say and push all of those decisions into our courts, which are not medical experts. So as the Sixth Circuit also recently said, life-tenured federal judges should be wary of removing a vexing and novel topic of medical debate from the ebbs and flows of democracy by construing a largely unamendable federal constitution to occupy the field. So that is what people are asking for. They're asking for judges to create medical law rather than voters informed by medical science.
That's right, and I think you touched on a really important...
Okay, because voters are informed by medical science, and not, like, manipulated by propaganda?
Issue here, and it's one that's been discussed a little bit today, and that is, Mr. McClintock said it eloquently, we're conservatives. We're limited government conservatives, right? We obviously recognize that parents have a natural and fundamental right to the upbringing of the children, to make decisions with regard to their care and custody and control. But at the same time, our legal system in this country, our law, does not allow a parent to physically or mentally abuse or harm a child, right? So what we're all trying to do here in a very reasoned way is to strike a balance, to make sure that we're not doing life-altering harm to.
We're accusing parents of trans kids of doing something potentially abusive. We're asking the question of whether this is actually abuse, but we're trying to be fair and balanced, TM.
People who are not prepared for that. And in some of the states, like in California, Mr. McClintock's home state, they are pushing the parents out of the room, and they're doing this without their consent. And that is alarming, and it should be obviously unlawful. Let me switch the subject here. If doctors are using chemical castration drugs in an off-label fashion, that is for a purpose other than what they were approved for by the FDA, should doctors face legal consequences? What do you think about that?
So that is subject to medical malpractice charges. Also, states regulate the practice of medicine. So states are perfectly entitled to regulate what drugs that people can access themselves. And if you can regulate what people can access themselves, obviously that would confer to the child as well. Unfortunately, I think you're seeing this movement that states should not be able to regulate the practice of medicine, and somehow federal judges should. But absolutely, medical malpractice suits should be available here. Unfortunately, you've seen the politicization.
Yeah, where Florida had a stacked medical board ruling against trans people, a bunch of people appointed who had donated to Ron DeSantis' campaign, who were appointed by him to then make the decision. Yeah, that's definitely the process by which we're gonna do this.
Of medical associations creating standards that are then informing doctors. And so I think that what this body could and should do is make sure that there are research, that there is science that are informing states so that their medical boards can make better decisions.
I do love how no one asked her a single question in this whole 2-hour thing until just now, though. That's pretty funny.
That's well said. Early in my legal career, I did medical malpractice defense. This was one of the areas, and the medical standard was a big thing. We had medical review panels in the state of Louisiana, as most states do, and they would look to the medical standard. And if the standard itself is not fully informed by studies that back it up, we have a broad-scale concern here. Can you define quickly, changing subjects, what a sanctuary state is in context of gender transition procedures for children?
So California has bragged that it is a sanctuary state as far as gender transition for minors. It has SB 107. There are copycat bills being introduced in other states, and it has two main provisions. One,
copycat bills. As though that's not the thing that's happening all over the country with these anti-trans bills.
Is that if a child goes to California to have a gender procedure, the California courts will take over the custody proceedings. So one parent can take a child away from their other parents, and then the California court can assert jurisdiction. That's one provision. The second provision is that in California, they will not give over any medical information if it relates to another state's transgender procedure laws. So California is priding itself on ripping families apart, when you would think that if they have 170,000 homeless people living in the state, that they would focus on the benefits and improving the lives of Californians.
This apple doesn't taste like bacon. Oh my God.
Very well said. And in 7 seconds, I can't do any justice to have you ask another question. I want to thank you all sincerely. This is an important hearing. It was not an easy one for anybody, but it's a really important issue that we have to wrestle with on both sides of the aisle and in every state across the country. And many legislatures are doing that right now. And in my view, some are doing some really, really important work. We have to determine what we're going to do at this level. And so your testimony, all of you, your testimony today was valuable for that purpose. This concludes. One more,
you see. Thank you. An article entitled "California Bill on Youth Mental Health Services" has been distorted on social media, discussing the fact that California law does not authorize gender-affirming surgeries without parental consent.
I'm going to defer to the wisdom of my witness, but without objection, we'll admit that in the record. This concludes today's hearing. We thank our witnesses for appearing today.
All right. I don't know if there's anything else that I can say about any of that, because I was addressing every point as they came up. But these people are willing to be dishonest. These people are willing to misrepresent the truth. These people are willing to destroy the lives of vulnerable transgender children in pursuit of a fascist agenda, without a question, without any question. And it's ridiculous. How many times is this going to happen where our supposedly fair and balanced TM panel is comprised of a majority of anti-trans voices? I'm going to defer to our expert witness on that one. Why did they clip chimp a doctor who provides care instead of inviting him there? Thank you, John Gitman, for your $5 dono. Thanks for doing stuff like this. I know it isn't always fun, but somebody's got to do it. These hearings are frustrating, and at least you bring a level of entertainment to this bullshit. I hope that it's at least somewhat entertaining. Yeah, thank you so much. I just don't know how to address these people at a certain point. I mean, I guess, I do know because I keep doing it. This is a lie. This is a misrepresentation. This is an obfuscation. I'm just doing my best to live fact check this as much as I can as we go through. It's so difficult to, it's live fact checking is a thing that sometimes you have an entire team working on, and frankly they were doing it, the Democrats on this panel were doing it during the thing. That's why they would be oh, by the way, I'm just going to enter into the record officially this article that contradicts a point that my Republican colleague just made. So again, and it was good to see the support from the Democrats and see that they were willing to speak strongly and use very, strong language to condemn this behavior. And it's good that we acknowledge the humanity of Ms. Reynolds, who, deserves respect. She deserves to be acknowledged and respected. And it was highly disrespectful what that one congressman said about oh, this is feeding your kid ice cream all the time. It bothers me a little bit. and I don't know if this is regular procedure, but it bothers me a little bit that some people showed up to give their statements and then just fucking left. Like at the end of this thing, I don't know if you saw the table, but there were not very many people left on the table, you know, because folks just said their piece and then took off. So, man. Yeah, thank you, Julie, for your service to the trans nation. I'm doing my best, y'all. I'm fucking trying my best. This stuff is frustrating and scary, and yeah, hearing a few agreeing voices does give me a small amount of hope. But the problem is, like, yeah, we're having this discussion in the Congress, and I said it at the beginning of the segment, and I'll say it again. The problem is that this is going to be up to the courts. They don't have the numbers to pass it through the legislative body, and they don't have Biden on their side, and if they get a veto, they don't have the veto-proof majority. So, but the thing is that if in 2024 they do win more red seats, then we are potentially screwed. Like, if Biden loses this next election, we are screwed. Trans rights are dead. Unfortunately, voting for Biden is going to be a necessary aspect of harm reduction, and I'm sorry to all of you about that. Like, he's not as bad as we sometimes think he is, but he is not my favorite person, and it sucks. But yeah, we are fucked if we don't get that presidency seat in the next election. Like, there's no way. And they are broadcasting their intent. This is a campaigning move. And I did appreciate that some of the Democrats called this out, that, you know, this is an attempt to get votes. This is an attempt to radicalize and create rage, so that there is, like, someone to point to. There's, like, someone to win over. As someone who watches these all the time, it is normal. Yeah, we've watched some of these before, of, like, yeah, they are not... This is not abnormal. These conversations happen across the country, and it's not gonna stop, unfortunately. So, let's go ahead and wrap it there. Oh, man. Why do they campaign on this when it's not shown to move that many voters? Because it's about power consolidation, really. Oh, it's late, and it's still quite hot in my apartment, shockingly. Still quite hot in my house. So I am going to probably go ahead and take off now and try to rest and relax and get ready for bed and stuff. Yeah, classic Mr. Atheist shirt. Thanks. Yeah, so thank you all for joining me on this one, and on Thursday, hopefully we'll have a more fun stream. I'm not sure yet. So, anyway, I'll see you next time. Bye.